Well, folks, welcome. I think we might be a minute early, but here we are at the Works Local Racing Roundup, and I think myself we've got a star-studded show here tonight, excluding myself and Justin. But anyway, first off, of course, we're going to have Mark Morrell, and I think all of you are going to be somewhat, I'm going to use the word amazed, Mark, by what this guy has done through the years, because as we talked on the phone the other night, it kind of amazed me, because I knew there was, quite a bit that he had done, but boy, there's way more than what I remember. What have we known each other, Mark? I don't know how far we go back, but 10, 15 years?
Yeah, probably more than that. Probably back in 2000, or probably even earlier than that, maybe 99 or...
Yeah, I was going to say I retired in 2002. And it probably was. I think I was still working when I was doing that, because I remember my wife complaining about me being gone too much. But anyway, Mark Morrell's going to be the first guest, and like I say, I think it's going to be fun to hear what all he's been in. And then Carl Flowers has been kind enough to drive down from Topeka, and we really appreciate that, Carl. You might, if you get it back up there, put a bug in Darren Fuqua's ear. I sent him an invitation, but as far as I know, I haven't received anything back, but I know it's a drive. But man, we'd love to get Darren on. That would be fun when it does.
Oh yes,
absolutely. But Carl's going to come on, and we're going to talk, or Justin and Mark are going to talk with him a little bit about tech work and what all's involved. And anything you can add to that about?
Oh well, we'll be talking to Carl. It's obviously been a contentious subject. Let's just be real about it. But I think that my personal view on it, anyway, is that it's a big step in the right direction, and is a real positive for the racing community. And you can't please everybody, of course, but some love it, some hate it, and but the people that have stepped forward and put themselves out there to be a part of this, we're going to talk about them, and I'm sure Carl will have a lot of insight to provide on the subject, so I'm excited about it.
The way I look at it is, if we didn't have tech, we'd probably have late models running in street stocks. I think it's a high possibility. So yes, tech is very important, and I don't envy those guys. Promoting a track or being a tech guy, I think, is two things I don't ever want to do. So please remind me of that if I ever suggest it. I do not want to go that route. But anyway, Carl will be on here, and I'm sure we're going to learn some interesting facts about tech from Carl. And then probably right at 8 o'clock, if you are interested in a certain individual that's going to be on here, we're going to have Ernie Leftwich, who is the racing director with MLRA. I just happened to run into Ernie while I was down in Florida at East Bay when the Lucas Oil late models were there, and got to talking with him. We always kind of spot each other or whatever across the pits and say, hey, what's going on, man? And we kind of catch up, because I don't know if I actually, other than Lakeside, did any MLRA races last year. I don't think. But anyway, we kind of got caught up with stuff, and I told him, I said, man, it'd be really relevant, to what is going on right now with them being down there at East Bay. I said, how about coming on the show? And then we got snowed out last week. But anyway, I got in contact with him this morning. There again, had a really interesting discussion with Ernie, so I'm looking forward to that too. I go back a little ways with Ernie and the MLRA. But just to kind of start the show off, I think, Justin, you've got some breaking news, man. What's going on?
Well, it has to do with I-70 Speedway and the I-70 Motorsports Park coming to our side. And the Odessan just released earlier this morning an article concerning a public hearing that is to take place at Berry Acres, which is north of Odessa.
Berry Acres. Yes. Now, is that a facility, just kind of a banquet thing or something? Or do you know?
I wish that I had more details on that, but I know that it is north of Odessa off of Highway 31, and the public hearing is going to take place on March 13th, which is a Tuesday at 7 p.m. So it's a public hearing. It's an opportunity to express, your objections, or more importantly, your support. As far as our viewership here goes, I know a lot of people are excited about it. A lot of people have fond memories of the complex.
Absolutely.
And I mean, there's so much racing heritage there. So Go ahead and put that on your calendars. If you're passionate about I-70 coming back, public hearing is your chance to step forward and express that support. Again, Tuesday, March 13th, 7 p.m., Berry Acres, north of Odessa, off Highway 131. So, but that being said, just about an hour ago, I-70 Motorsports Park posted for immediate distribution that Central Power Systems and Services is claiming the naming rights to the new drag strip being built out there. They go on to have some quotes from the owner, the president of that company, and they also touch on the oval dirt track being built out there. In the Odessan article this morning, they were going off of documents that were provided to the county that had April 1st as the projected opening date for the track. I was going to go out on a limb and say that was probably going to be postponed a little bit, and that was confirmed in this I-70 Motorsports Park post, where it is projected to be an ASCS sprint car event as an opening date on May 18th. So, obviously Chris Payne is doing his best to drum up interest and support, and we already have interest and support from local Kansas City companies and businesses investing in the track, investing in the complex. So if you're a race fan, go ahead and invest yourself and show up at that public hearing, or at least share the I-70 Motorsports Park post, and let's drum up some more excitement in the community and get I-70 back up and a part of this community again.
All I got to say is if they don't have the bleachers ready, I'll bring a folding chair.
All right.
Or whatever, because it just seems like they have a tremendous amount of work to get accomplished out there. And what is this, end of February? So
Mother Nature, of course, has a huge role in the,
the
racing world, whether it be building a track or just your weekly show.
Absolutely.
I was proud to get that breaking news out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and step behind the camera over here and turn it over to you guys.
Just before you leave, and I'm sure you're going to hear this several times during the show because we're really trying to promote it, but we will be live tomorrow night, probably same time, same place. No, 7 o'clock tomorrow night we'll be in Bartle Hall for the World of Wheels. And that light goes off by itself. Just move and it'll come back on. But anyway.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike, because also I-70 Motorsports Park has a section at the World of Wheels with Central Power Systems and Services President Robin Roberts is going to be there with his, I believe it was a 68.
Robin Roberts, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, coming back.
She's going to have a 68 Ford Firebird, Pontiac Firebird, obviously there. So I wanted to say Ford Fairlane. I used to have a 68 Ford Fairlane, so that's the first words that always comes out of my mouth after 68. But anyway, that's the news I got. And stop by and check out the I-70 Motorsports Park section at the World of Wheels show this weekend, as well as the Central Auto Racing Boosters and the Central Auto Racing Boosters Hall of Fame section. So.
Yeah, I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be there Saturday, from what I understand.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
Yeah, so you can see Junior. I think that's around noon, 1:30, somewhere in there. So for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. So definitely catch that if you want to catch Dale Jr. down there, roller wheels. So
yeah, we'll have a lot of drivers doing autograph sessions. Even the little 9-year-old junior sprint driver is going to be there. Waylon Phillips, he's going to be having an autograph session too.
All right, now and I have to put in a nod for NHRA because Larry Dixon, 3-time champion, is going to be at the Menards in North area up by, I think it's Green Hills Road, and that'll be on Saturday too, so check that out too. So if you can't make World of Wheels, definitely head out to Menards North up by Green Hills Road and catch Larry Dixon up there, so that'd be cool. He's going to do autographs and pictures and stuff. So straight liners, there you go.
Yeah,
Larry.
A lot of motorsport stuff going on in this town in February. Isn't that wonderful? I absolutely love it. Well, thank you, Justin.
Yep, I'll be back with Carl Flower here after you.
In a little bit, not too long. You only got 20 minutes. Like I say, if you would adjust that camera and actually flip that screen so me and Mark can see ourselves.
Oh, I don't know about that. I kind of like it right like it is.
Well, it's so small, Mark. Don't.
Well, that's probably a good thing.
But anyway, like I say, first up is Mark Morrell. And Mark, I guess my first question to you, I feel like I need to scoot back a little bit here, is what was your first experience with racing?
Well, it goes back to 1964. We were living in Liberty, Missouri, and I was living next door to Well, we didn't know it at the time, but an IMCA driver, Jerry Wishman, and his wife, Billy, and Jerry was talking to my dad one time, and they were saying, well, I'd really like to work on the car for you, if you need some help. And Jerry was like, well, certainly, and talked about where he raced. It was Lakeside and all that. So the old Lakeside, so
must have been a modified.
Oh, a late model.
Really?
Yeah, late model
IMCA?
Yeah, IMCA late model.
Oh, see, I think the first I remember hearing of them was when not Carl Castor. I can't remember his first name, but Larry Castor. When Larry Castor introduced the IMCA modifieds over at Riverside, was the first I heard of it, but it must have been a little while after that.
Probably,
it was a late model.
Yeah. And he was running, I think, the number 51 for Howard Kirkland for Liberty Truck Stop or Liberty Truck Stop. They used to have a, well, I hate to say it, but in the old days they call it choke and puke or whatever. But it was really good food. It was good food.
A cafe.
A cafe, yeah. Thank you for helping me with that. But at any rate, they had a little place there, and Jerry was sponsored by them. I think he ran the 51 car at that point. It was like a light with a slash and kind of a turquoise back. And so we started going to the shop up there they had in Liberty. He worked at Ford. And so we started going to races. And so that's pretty much how I got introduced. Going to the shop for the first time, see what it's like in the car, and they turn it over, and it was hooked from that point on.
Like Carl was saying before the show started, they had a sign outside their shop that said, "Do not enter."
It said, "Enter at your own risk." It says, "Caution, inside this garage is a highly contagious, incurable disease."
Yeah, and it is. It is. Absolutely. And he's got that right.
Once it gets your hooks in your wife, you've had it, whatever. But I think one of the first times I remember seeing you or hearing you, of which, like I told you on the other night, you are my hero.
Oh,
because
I really appreciate it.
Because you were always so smooth and prepared and had the right questions. And I thought, man, if I could ever do this like Mark Morrell, I feel like I'm doing something, and here I am actually getting to interview you.
Well, thanks, man. That's really cool. Well, on your deal, I mean, this is a really neat deal. And I have to tell you, Mike, I was watching the show last week. I know we couldn't do it. It was a shame because of the weather and so forth. And I was looking forward to seeing Carl and doing the show here with you guys and Justin, but snow prohibited that. But I have to tell you, most of everything that I've ever done or ever got into with anything that I've ever accomplished has been because of just what you're doing. Going to a track, making things happen. And I remember you coming with that camera for the first time out at Lakeside Speedway. You're out there and Bob Libby and so forth, and the story there with Motorsports and all that and everything. But you have done, so many videos across not only the tracks here, but and thankless hours, interviewing drivers, putting those videos up. I can't tell you how many times drivers, public, teams, a lot of the teams would videotape, but not, they get their segment, but not the whole night of the features and so forth. And for a lot of people, they're like, hey, did you see it on Cheese yet? Did you see it on Cheese? So I have to tell you, I have to just thank you for your efforts and all the things that you've done for so many years, going out there, thankless hours. I'm not even sure you were getting compensated for much of that, or if you were or not.
Never.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. Just to go out there and do that. This is a pretty amazing deal. And what you've given everybody, because we can take pictures and we can write about it, and to visually see it like that and have it as a record, that's a really cool deal. And I think a lot of racers really appreciate that on tracks too. No matter where you go, any track. Exactly. We all tip our hats to you, Mike. And I'd have to say in that way, you're my hero for doing that. Seriously.
Well, thank you, Mark.
And I think a lot of drivers would feel the same way too, and teams and tracks as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All those comments.
You're welcome.
It's been a labor of love, is all I'm going to say. I mean, I've loved racing from the time I was around it, and just have enjoyed going and doing. And like I've told Justin, the way I feel about it is everybody, I don't care if you're front wheel drive, whatever it is, everybody should get their 10 minutes at least.
Right.
Because they work as hard as anybody else. But anyway, it's about you, buddy, not me.
Okay, well, thanks.
Okay.
I just want to tell you, I just really appreciate that.
The first time I really remember, I think, seeing you or knowing anything about you was when I think you were with Bob Libby, and you guys were doing a TV show. I said live, but it wasn't live. You told me a while ago it was on a day delay.
Yeah.
But I think it was on 38th the spot, and it was
Yep.
from I-70.
Yep.
How did that come about? And I know you had to have enjoyed working with Bob. Bob was a tremendous guy. I really miss him.
Oh, yeah. Bob and I was fortunate enough to do a lot of stuff with Bob. It seemed like if he would do something, he would start to ask me if he had a project, or I would do the same thing with him. We did so many different things together over the years, which was so cool. Neither one of us, the cool thing about it is, and you have to have somewhat of an ego to get up there and talk about stuff or be in front of people and so forth. But at the same time, Bob didn't have that ego hang up with stuff like that.
No.
I mean, he would invite, to do it, have us do the All Speed Racing newspaper that you were showing me there back in 2002.
Where is that?
It's over on the table, I think.
Justin, hand me that
But,
All Speed. Did I have an article in here? Or didn't
Yeah,
I?
you did.
That's what I thought.
You did
Which
on
one
the
was it?
RC remotes, or the RC cars.
Oh, the RC cars, really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's in there.
I don't know if you all can see that.
And
About
look
one
who's on there,
year.
Clint Boyer.
About what year was this published?
2002. I think it ran for a couple of years at least, 2 or 3. It was
2 or
Kansas
3?
City Star. Bruce Ross came out with that. The Kansas City Star actually approached us about doing a publication, and they, because they saw when Kansas Speedway was going to be put in here, how much that was going to mean,
Yeah.
and they wanted to get in, of course, on the monetary side of it, and so they decided to develop this paper called All Speed Racing News. They gave us the idea, or we, kind of gave them and we collected a whole bunch of stuff. We have Tim Gallion as a professional photographer for the paper. And just kind of an all-star deal. Jennifer Cobb wrote for it. Bob wrote for it. You wrote for it. J.D. Green wrote for it.
I was thinking
there was a bunch of drivers in there too. Steve Chick, I think, was in that one.
Isn't there one in here? Isn't that J.D. right there?
Yep. So we had all kinds of people writing in there stuff all the time. And it was kind of interesting to see the last laps of the Daytona 500 were, here is Clint Boyer, who ran Lakeside and then of course I-70, and then here's Jamie McMurray. And they're running nose to tail. Jamie from Joplin, of course. And here they were running nose to tail at the Daytona 500 in the final lap. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. But that was a fun deal. I enjoyed it. I think I may have only had 2 or 3 pieces in there, but man, it was fun to do.
And Bob was in on that too. I know Bob did that.
Yeah.
The 38th the spot deal, I think we started out, and they were going to do it on Metro Sports, but the editing thing kind of fell through when they were doing that. So I got a hold of a friend of mine, Rick Cole, who has been with William Jewell for several years, but before that did all kinds of videos. I mean, we did stuff from sports all over the area here. Two Eagles Action Media, and he had that, and then of course did lots of other stuff. But I called up Rick and I said, look, I-70 Speedway wants to put on a weekly racing TV play-by-play every lap down the line. And so I knew he could produce it. And of course I've been in television doing other stuff with TNN and CBS and all the other people. So we decided that Rick could do the job. I told him where we normally put the cameras for TNN Motorsports when we would do ASA racing out there. And so he said okay, and so he ran it. And I called up Bob and I said, Bob, I'm going to have you sitting next to me doing this thing. I said, it would be really cool to do the show together. He says, heck yeah. So
I bet.
we did it.
I could hear Bob saying that.
Oh, yeah. And what they did is they cut it live. So it looked like, so it was just like a live show. So we did everything from the pre-race drop of the green flag all the way down to the final checkered flag. And then we did a post-race wrap-up and then ended it. And then Rick would edit all that down, put it on a disc.
I'm glad it was him and not me.
For goodness sake, he did a lot of yeoman's work every week. And then he would take that down, and then they would take it to 38 the spot, and then they'd run it on Sunday.
I'll be darned.
Yep, every week. So
that had to be a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Kind of speaking about the writing part again, you worked with Chris Economaki, who did some stuff for Speed Sport News.
Yeah.
What kind of a person was he? Was it easygoing? I mean, he seemed like such a nice guy on TV.
That kind of thing is just exactly like I'm talking about with you, with your tenacity and kind of getting your stuff and going there. Kind of like the first time I got into television, I was trying to get in. I was doing, I'd done some stuff with, going to races and doing some stuff with Ron Hall for the programs and so forth, locally. And so the ASA series was coming to I-70 Speedway quite a bit. So I was out there and I was like, I can do part of this, help him out with a production deal. And so I called up. I found out TNN was produced out of Nashville. Well, it's actually Nashville Network, but it was produced out of Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Oh, really?
Patty Wheeler, Humpy Wheeler's daughter. was the one running the network.
I'll be darned.
You know me, I'm like, I'm calling Patty Wheeler. So I called up Patty Wheeler and I said, how do I get a job doing this, working this deal? I think I can add a lot to you guys and, you know, do all this stuff. And she goes, well, first, who are you? Right?
Yeah, what was that name?
Yeah, right.
Who are you?
So, right. And you're not part of the South, you know, all this other stuff. So we started talking, and she kind of quizzed me about the ASA series, and I said, well, you know, she goes, you know, I like your enthusiasm, and she goes, but you need to learn a little bit more about who's driving which car and so forth. She goes, call me back next year and early next year, and we'll see about getting you on there.
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, okay. So I called her back the next year, and I said, Patty, you remember me? And she goes, yes, I do. And I said, okay, well, let's get together. So Aaron Thornton, who was the head spotter, we got together, and I started working with TNN Motorsports. So that was the first part of that, and that's, you know, that's the tenacity thing. You know? That worked out with MRN as well. Part of that deal. That was pretty cool.
Sometimes you got to let it hang out a little bit, and I think, like I was telling Justin, you know, a lot of this is all new to him, what we're doing, because he was saying the longest interview he'd ever done before was 3 minutes in the pits.
Right?
And this is a little different.
Well, go back to your question about Chris. I actually, on that one too, I was listed. Well, I looked at the Kansas City Star, and they had a deal in the morning paper about the fact that International Speedway Corporation had talked about the fact that they were going to make an agreement, and they were going to have a press conference at the Reardon Center over in Kansas City, Kansas. I've never been to the Reardon Center. I've been over to Kansas City, Kansas a few times. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go over there. So I'm going to go to the press conference. So I went to the press conference, and I showed up. And there's Grant Lynch from International Speedway Corporation, so I asked him a few questions, and then asked the guys from Mayor Marinovich, who was the mayor of the Unified Government at that time, Carol Marinovich.
Lady,
And we're talking and so forth, and so I got some quotes from her. So I was a subscriber to National Speed Sport News, and of course Chris Economaki has been forever. You know, television, writing the paper. He's just, you can't say enough about Chris and what he did in racing.
The guy that kind of reminds me of him nowadays is, works for Lucas Oil and does the pit coverage. He's a Hall of Fame announcer. And gosh, I can't
think of his name right now.
I can't think of his name. Why did I bring this up?
Nah, that's okay.
Albright?
Oh, Dave Algebright?
Dave Algebright.
Yeah, and he's worked a lot of stuff
in
television.
He kind of reminds me of Chris Economaki in that he's been everywhere and done everything. So,
well, I called up Chris, and I got all this information, right? And I got the press releases, so that's kind of a souvenir stuff, too. And that's kind of cool, you know? Because at that time, it was Kansas International Speedway. They're talking KISS, you know? Right? But they changed that deal, you know? But at any rate, so I... You know, the kind of same old deal. I looked at the masthead, and I said, called the number in North Carolina right after the press conference, and I talked to Corinne, his daughter, who was managing editor at the time too, and so she said, well, let me get you to Chris. And I said, okay. So I talked to Chris, and he goes, and then that voice goes, this is Chris Economaki. And I said, well, hey, Chris, this is Mark Morrell. And he goes, well, what are you doing, Mark? And I said, well, here's the deal. And I told him, you know, I was out there, and he goes, well, since I don't know you and don't know your writing style and what you can do, I want you to write the story for me and then send me all the press information that you got as well. Send the story along with that. And if your story's good enough, we'll give you a byline. If it's not, then we got the stuff. So I said, fair enough. Okay. So I wrote the story, sent it to him, and I ran the byline.
Oh, really? Oh, be darned.
So it was really cool. And what was really neat about that is when ESPN did their 50th anniversary NASCAR special, they were showing all the history of NASCAR from the beach, and the camera's kind of panning through the stuff with a voiceover. At the very end of it, they get to National Speed Sport News, and it's sitting there with the byline that I wrote.
That you wrote?
National Speedway Corporation announces, you know, first facility since 1969 when they built Talladega.
I'll be darned.
And that was a heck of a thrill. Oh my gosh. So then I started writing for them, and I did a second one, and then I called up Chris and I said, you going to be okay with this? And he goes, well, Mark, I tell you what, we're just going to make you just follow all the stories there. And then and I said, well, what about Lakeside Ice Center? We go, oh, yes, there's lots of history there. He goes, I want you to, you know, you can write for us, just be a regular deal. And I said, well, what do I call myself? Because when I go into these press conferences, I don't know what to say.
Who do I represent?
Right. And he says, well, you just tell me you're the Midwest correspondent for National Speed Sport News. And I'm like, okay, I like that moniker. I'll wear it out.
No kidding. Hey, can I have a big badge or something?
And Chris was amazing.
Yeah,
I got down there in, 99 or 2000, and I think it was 99 actually, 2000. And I got to see Chris in person down there and talk with them and stuff. And man, you talk about a book. I always asked him about writing a book, and he was like, well, Mark, it just takes the time. It's just the time that he had to put that down. But he taught me a lot. I asked him before we did the first race at Kansas Speedway. We were starting on Steve Parker and Kirk Elliott and myself. We started, well, actually, I called it a Danny Klinkskill show on KBZ one night. See, this is again one of those,
stick it out there.
My way
Stick it out there and see if somebody chops it off or
right.
not.
Curtis Siebel was the guy doing the production work at the board, and he said that Danny was talking about racing in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I called him up, and I'm talking to him, and they said, kept holding me through the brakes. And he said, this is a 99. And he said, well, you know what? We got a racing show going on here. Curtis came on and said that during a break, and he goes, I think you'd be real good on that show. We got it going, and I gave you the name of the people, and I did. Then I met with them, and it was first time Steve Parker, who's the track announcer at Kansas Speedway, and Steve and I did the show, and then Kirk Elliott. And so we met the first time. We were sitting down talking, and the guys came back, and they go, look, you guys are talking. You just did a racing show sitting right here at the restaurant, man. so we started that show, and then so that was pretty cool. We did a year on KBZ, and then we moved over because KF was going to we tried to get 61 Country to be the NASCAR affiliate for MRN Radio, but 610, or what was it? WHB, unbeknownst to us, along with KFKF, were partnering up, and so they decided to take those guys instead, and so
bigger audience,
right?
probably.
And so we had O'Reilly Auto Parts. That was another thing. Bill Kentling was the owner or running Heartland Park Topeka at one point, and I was looking for a sponsor because we were into the show about a month and a half. This was like January, and they said, well, you guys got to have a sponsor or we're going to shut you down in another week or two. And so I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I called up Bill Kentling at Heartland Park Topeka, and I said, Bill, I need to get sponsorship for the show. What can you do for me? And he goes, you know what, Mark? You know how many racing shows there are out there? There's more racing shows than there are stars in the night sky. And he goes, what in the world would make me want to sponsor your show? And I said, because I'm on it. And he goes, hey, you got a point there. I like that. So, not that was going to change his mind, because he goes, oh, I don't want to put my money on a single show. But I'll tell you what I will do is I'll get you a hold of the people down in Springfield, Missouri, to O'Reilly Auto Parts, and there's Lynette Ashcroft and Ron Byerly, and you get a hold of them, and we'll see what we can do, and I'll give them a call and tell them that I'm sending you there. They signed on as a sponsor, and I think they were with us for like 12 years until they got to IRP and put their name on that, and then that was the end of it. So.
When we're done here, Mark, give me that phone number.
Absolutely. It may have changed since last time.
Give me that phone number.
Yeah, that put us on KF. So then the first time they were going to run the NASCAR Wins the West Series at Kansas Speedway, along with the ARCA Series, at the very first race, and I think it was June of that year, in 2001, or 2000, I believe. No, 2001. And so Dale Carter was like, well, man, we need to put this on the air here. Let's do it live. And so he asked me about all the equipment we're going to need, and I said, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to pay for all the equipment. And I said, why don't we get MRN on this deal? So, because I've been talking with them, and they said, okay. So MRN came in the deal, and we paid for that, and then so we did the first race from Kansas Speedway. Now, we didn't do the NASCAR Winston Westwood. There was a double feature that day. I think it was June of 2001. And so Steve was up in the booth. Gosh, I can't remember the guy's name that was up there with him, but a regular MRN guy. Adam Alexander, who's, you see him all the time on Inside NASCAR and all the stuff. He was on pit lane, and I said, well, they wanted me on pit lane. And I said, well, where do you want? He says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, how about lead? He goes, okay. So I got lead pit lane reporter, and Adam was there, and then Jason Jarrett ended up winning the race. So that was in the BPU 200 at Kansas Speedway, the ARCA race.
I'm trying to remember whether I remember
if the driver won that, because Kimmel won the NASCAR Winston West deal, and Ryan Newman was in that race.
Yeah. Man,
And
what a
among
memory.
others.
I don't know how you remember all this. I'm doing good
But,
with yesterday, let alone all that.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
fun in that deal, so that was part of that.
If I remember right, you and I, or you actually were doing a show, and I believe it was 610, it was a radio show, and you were doing a live cast out in the pits at Kansas Speedway. And if I remember, I just got to set in. We're about out of time, by the way. But anyway,
Okay.
I just got to set in with you. I don't even remember. I mean, he was probably a third or fourth tier driver for NASCAR that you were interviewing.
Right.
But I actually got to sit down and got to ask him a couple of questions, and that was probably one of the neatest things I ever done that I ever got to be involved in at the Speedway. But wasn't there a local racing show? Because I was thinking I got in right on the end of that too, after you had left.
Yeah, actually, when I first started, the first racing radio show that I did was prior to that. I actually, when Tom and Scott started their show in 1510 KCTE, I think it was.
Yeah.
They had their racing show, and they were doing local and so
Right.
forth. So I asked him. I called him up. Imagine that, right? I called him up and I said, "Hey, would you guys like somebody to cover the NASCAR stuff?"
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Well, yeah, I think we could do that. You know,
Yeah.
might fit you in and do that." And they just were digging shovels in the ground at Kansas Speedway. So the first time I called them up, I was standing on the earth where they first put the shovels in the ground.
Oh, really?
And I called them up. And then the next week was the Brickyard 400.
Uh-huh.
So I went there, and of course Jeff Berger, I think, was president of the track by then. He goes, "Man, whatever interviews you want, we want all this publicity back in Kansas City." So I went down to the Brickyard 400, and now, of course, there's kind of rules against some of this. But I took my phone, and we put Bobby the Bonnie on the show live from the Brickyard 400. I put Ricky Rudd, who won the race prior, I believe. We put him live on the show there. And Ernie Irvin on the show live on their show.
Okay.
And so I was on for them. I think I was on maybe 3 weeks with them. And then that ended, and they were kind of, sticking more to the local stuff, which I could totally understand, and that was all cool. And then when Steve and Kirk and I started that show, it was all NASCAR Cup, trucks, and Busch. That's all we were going to do. And so Steve wasn't really familiar with the other stuff.
That's
he was
kind of
more
what
NASCAR Cup, so...
he was a big
then-
NASCAR fan, if I remember right. But like say the local stuff, he just wasn't up to date or whatever you want to
Well,
call
then on 1250, I started another comprehensive racing show, and I had AJ Foyt on that show live. I had Mimo Gidley, the Indy guys. I had NHRA guys on that show.
Hey, Justin, are you listening to this,
So-
man?
Yeah.
Are you listening to this?
So we did a lot. I did a more comprehensive show on that one.
This stuff I never knew anything
was
about.
part
I mean, I got no notes on this.
Well, it's part of the Intercom group.
Yeah.
So I did a show there with that one, and then so that was pretty fun. I just hosted that by myself on that deal.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a low-end frequency deal. It wasn't a real popular station, and so. But I did a comprehensive show there by myself, and then I was doing the show with Steve. At one point, I was doing. I did a Saturday morning show on local racing on KMBZ, and then we came back and I did. Then I would go out to Lakeside, I-70 Speedway, and did live play-by-play. That was with Rick Sanders. I did live play-by-play on 610 Sports. Gary Joslin from Joslin's Jewelry actually sponsored that show.
Yes, as I recall, yes, absolutely.
And we did flag-to-flag coverage of every race from the start to end, live radio from start to end. And
one of the notes that I had is
that was wild.
I remember you guys were doing the show, and I had a pretty good video of one of the wrecks, and I went in there and played it back for you guys. You guys kind of did a play-by-play of the video.
That was pretty wild.
Even though nobody could see it. But anyway,
that was wild. So,
we've really got to move on. We're getting into Carl's time.
Yeah.
One last question.
Okay.
Mark is announcer at I-35. How'd that come about?
Well, I filled in for Bob Libby at Lakeside Speedway. Bob was the track announcer, and he was, I think, with his wife now, or with his now widow, unfortunately, but they were getting together and doing a lot of stuff, and it was a summer event, and I think it was June of that. I can't remember what year exactly it was, but Bob called me up and he goes, I need you to fill in. The World of Outlaws are going to be here, and we're going to have a regular racing series with a couple of groups here. So if you wouldn't mind coming out and doing that part of it for me, I'd really appreciate you coming out and being the announcer for that deal. And I said, man, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I'd really like to have you do it. And I said, okay. So I went out there and did the show, and then that's when I talked with JD and, of course, Mike Johnson.
Bingo, that's where I thought it came from.
And Mike Johnson.
no, JD.
Right? Well, Mike Johnson was out
JD.
there at that time, and then he became, just then he owned both tracks at that point. He owned I-35 and Lakeside Speedway.
Right.
And then eventually he just owned I-35 Speedway. Well, then when they had the announcer change over at I-35, they asked me to come up there, and JD called me up and he goes, I'd like you to come out here and see if you can help us out. And I'm like, okay. So I came up there, and there we go. I do have an Earnhardt story I have to tell you.
Oh, okay.
All right. Real quick.
Okay.
Since we're, talking about Earnhardt died, and we were there. I was actually there that day, and I was just starting with MRN radio and all that stuff. But prior to that, the year before, Dale Earnhardt was in the press area, and they were running the IROC race. He actually was in that race when he held up the 5 in the windshield. I think he had Rusty or Labonte in front of him. I can't remember if it was Bobby Labonte or Rusty. I think it might have been Rusty. And he counted down the laps to the point where he was going to pass him.
Oh, really?
Out the window. And then he passed him. And then somebody called him Dale Sr.
Oh, really?
And he goes, yeah, that Dale Jarrett done started that bleep. And he goes, that's where it's going to end, right here. I ain't Dale Sr. And then I got 2 more for you real quick.
Okay.
Was at Talladega, and Earnhardt, I was down there doing the deal for a racing show. But I was down there in pit lane. This is where the action is. I love being down in pit lane, right? All that stuff. So at any rate, Earnhardt gets out of the car, and Mike Skinner was his teammate at that time for Richard Childress Racing. And Skinner just let him out to dry in this race. And so Earnhardt had, ended up drifting back in the pack, and what that meant at Talladega, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Earnhardt piles out of the car. I came up to Dale. First person comes up to him, right? Because they're up there interviewing first, second, and third, right? So Earnhardt pops out of the car, and I came up with the microphone, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, hey, Dale. I said, thought Mike Skinner was your teammate, and I said, he looked like he kind of let you out to dry there on the drafting deal. And he looked at me for the longest time and goes, are no friends, are no teammates. He just stormed right off. He never changed his uniform. I think he had his helmet still in his hand.
Oh, really?
And he walked out, and they put him in a rental car that was right over there, and he drove right over to that backstretch airport, and he just took off.
Oh, really?
That was the end of that day.
That sounds like Earnhardt.
And that was that last race at Talladega when we were in there too. The last story. And I don't mean to take your time, Carl, but
You're fine.
There was this deal. Now we're all supposed to be, correspondents. We're writing. Everybody's supposed to be, AP, ESPN. All these people are in the press box. And normally I like to be down below, where all the driving action's going on. But for this race, I sat up in the press area for Talladega. This was 2000 in the fall, and Earnhardt was middle of the pack with like 13 laps to go, and everybody was like, okay. Remember, there's people from press from all over are sitting there watching this thing, right? And they're writing down their stuff, and it's supposed to be, credentialed, what do you call it, deadline media up there, right? All this stuff. So they're all sitting up there writing all this stuff, and every once in a while you'd hear a whisper about, do you believe that, or would that blockhead do that? I can't believe that he did that, or this or that thing, or bonehead, or whatever they might call him. But at any rate, he gets a push from Kenny Wallace, and he starts coming through the pack, and the laps are counting down, and we get to the light flag, and all of a sudden Earnhardt, with the help of Kenny Wallace, comes up to the front of the pack. And I'm going to tell you what, even though everybody is supposed to be impartial, everybody in that press box, man, woman, and child that might have been standing there, was up on their feet shouting as loud as they could, as everybody was in the entire grandstands when he came across that finish line and won that race. Everybody was yelling. It was amazing. It was the most amazing moment I've seen among all these sports writers who's supposed to be impartial. It was just an amazing thing. And then he came up there, and with Kevin Hamlin and Richard Childress, and they're sitting there. I got pictures of it. I have to show you sometime. And he's sitting up there, and it was just, it was a really cool deal. And you know what? In '92, he raced at Heartland Park, and from my understanding, Ken Schrader qualified to the car for him. Dale Jr. had a lost weekend thanks to Ken Schrader. Dale Jr.'s talked about that before.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a little experience or two.
Yeah.
Thanks to Schrader. Schrader qualified the car for him because Earnhardt couldn't be there. Earnhardt comes in, races an ARCA race, right?
You're talking about Junior now.
Right. Well, Junior was there as a kid. He's just a kid.
As a
Rick
kid,
Hendrick
as a
was
kid.
there,
Oh,
and
okay.
he's like, with Junior kind of watching over him.
Yeah.
Ken Schrader's watching over him, but Ken Schrader's giving him a little too much information about, the opposite sex for this point in his lifestyle. So at any rate, he's down there, and so Schrader qualifies the car. Earnhardt comes in the next day, runs the car, had an engine problem. I think they listed him as an accident or something, but Earnhardt stood there for hours. I got a picture of him standing there, and I was lucky enough at that time I wasn't a member of the media, so you got an autograph.
Yeah.
You get autographs or pictures with the guy that's the race driver. No.
Yeah.
Or else you get your credential pulled.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you're a media member, that's the privileged area, so
Yeah.
you don't ask for that. If you
Okay.
get a selfie, then they want to do that, and you just have a moment, but most of the time, you never get an autograph from the driver or you get your credential pulled. But at any rate, I got, Earnhardt standing there. Well, from my understanding is that Dale Earnhardt had the ear of Bill France. And when Bill France Jr., so when he came back after that race, he saw how many fans there were at Heartland Park, Topeka for that race, and the guys like Schrader and so many, Hendrick were there, and Darrell Waltrip. I think we talked about that. Carl was reminding me of that, because the next year Waltrip came and just covered the field and laughed everybody to win that race. But at any rate, my understanding is that Earnhardt went back to Mr. France and said, look, we need to put a track or run at Heartland Park, Topeka. And for a few years they ran ASA, they ran ARCA, and they ran the trucks there eventually. But what they looked at was International Speedway Corporation was thinking, man, we need to build our own track. And as the first time since 1969 when they built Talladega, and they decided to build that one at Kansas Speedway.
Yeah.
We're talking about putting it up by the airport.
Oh, really?
But
yeah, it seems like I
Missouri
vaguely remember
and
that.
Darrell Waltrip made a plea to this Missouri State Legislature, but at the time didn't work out. They were just too enamored with what was going on right across the river, even though it was Illinois, with Gateway.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to sacrifice anything there.
Isn't that a shame? Two tracks like that, and we can't get one of them in
But
Missouri.
they certainly did it when they put the Kansas Speedway in. And
absolutely.
Lisa Kennedy and that group really did a great job of putting together Kansas Speedway.
Yeah.
So lucky to have it here.
Okay, Mark. Man,
That's some of the stories.
I enjoy it.
Some other sometime.
I think we could have went on for a while.
I got a few.
I got a feeling we just covered a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Justin, are you about ready, buddy?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yep.
But that was fun. So let me tell all those stories about that stuff.
Absolutely.
Not just the national stuff. The local stuff is pretty cool too.
Well, like I say, I knew you had a pretty storied history. I just didn't know it was that storied. But and like I said, we were just together. It seemed like a brief period.
I think the biggest thing, Mike, is that with the deal with like MRN, I happened to be doing a deal with KF, and they had a remote. Kyle Petty was doing his charity ride through here, and Dale Carter said, "Hey, come up here. You're the NASCAR guy for us. With Steve. I need you to come up here and do an interview." Of course, Steve's doing his traffic reports, so Major Miles. So Batman and Bruce Wayne this deal. But at any rate. So he said, come up here. Well, they had Steve Park and, of course, a lot of the other guys at the point. And so they had me live in the air, and I interviewed the guys. And then David Hyatt, who was the president of NASCAR, or president of MRN at the time, pulled me to the side and he goes, are you interested in working with MRN Radio?
Oh, really?
And I said, you know what? Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
And so then that put me in there for a couple of years with MRN Radio, which was a real privilege.
Yeah,
it was a really fun
I'd
deal.
be thrilled if they just asked me to do a 2-minute spot.
It was a lot of fun, but thanks for letting me kind of carry that on a little bit.
Absolutely, buddy. We're going to let Carl come in here. I'm kind of anxious to hear this because I know there's got to be some interesting information we're going to discuss.
I wouldn't say that.
Carl, do you want to have a
There's
seat?
no way I can top that.
Well, we can try.
We try.
I know Carl was telling me a lot of information too about like
Questions.
Clint Boyer and so forth.
Oh,
Pretty cool.
yeah.
See you later.
I'll let you introduce him. All right. Do your thing there.
Do our thing.
Make sure you guys are in the... Yep, everybody's in there.
Good deal. Well, Mark, you are a hard media personality to follow, so
See, I don't know if I can beat that one or not.
I wish I could say I was intimidated.
Somehow I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm happy to have Carl on the show tonight.
Justin,
Thanks for
thanks,
coming on, buddy. And I was
Glad to meet Mark. Yeah.
I was excited.
You know,
'cause,
Carl, I will have to tell you real quick. I've got a QT cup here. I was going to go to Dairy Queen, but then it would say DQ on the front of my cup.
Perfect for the moment, though. Perfect for the moment. Kind of Scott
fitting.
Bloomquist, kind of Scott Bloomquist. Everybody either loves me or hates me. It's one or the other.
All right, well, let's get right into it. Who is Carl Flower? What would you say your role here is in the local racing community, and what would you say your title is with the Mokan series?
There's no title there. It's the Mokan series is exactly that. It's a group of tracks that got together. We put a set of rules together as a group, as a whole, and it's kind of my deal to get it started. I kind of put it out there, and I talked to John Bowler, who I talked to, and I said, John, what do you think? You think we can do this? And he said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. So I said, well, why don't you make some phone calls? I'll make some phone calls, and we got a hold of everybody. And next thing we know, it's the thing was amazing was how everybody kind of jumped in and said, man, that just sounds like a great idea. Let's see what we can come up with.
Right.
And boom, it happened.
Yeah. Well, we've heard that there's some behind the scenes stuff going on with techs communicating with each other.
I've had the privilege. I've had the privilege, first of all, in my short time, I guess, back in the '90s, late '90s, my family quit racing. We raced at Thunder Hill a lot. We traveled a lot. We won a lot of races, 2 championships. We never bought anything. We built everything we ever had. We'd take an engine and machine shop, have it put together, or have the machine work done. We take it home, put it together, kind of thing. And we raced that way. And my first racing stuff was years ago. Would have been, and Mike would remember what they call the old Shawnee Speedway, Sloppy Hollow, Topeka Raceway Park. That's where I cut my teeth. I mean, that's where we used to go, in the old Shawnee County Fairgrounds. And then of course Heartland Park, Thunder Hill, and it just kind of grew from there. But
did you grow up a dirt fan?
Oh yeah. I was a big fan of Wild Bill Harrison and Tubby Harrison way back in the day. They were both old Topeka guys that ran a lot of IMSA stuff, and so I kind of grew up that way with them, and they were kind of my heroes. And Clayton Peterson out of Grand Island, Nebraska was my hero. I always thought that was the baddest guy on dirt. But a lot of fun and learned a lot. And it's just love dirt racing. It's just, there's no excitement in my opinion. Drag racing's okay, but there's just no talent in going a straight line. I'm sorry.
Well, I know, we might have some disagreements with that. But, who were the people that were instrumental, or how did this Mokan series come about?
Well, like I say, it was kind of, I kind of thought about doing, something. We just need to get tracks together. We need to get guys together as a whole. And now that this has happened, we've heard for years guys complaining, why can't these tracks get together? Why can't everybody have the same set of rules? It's like everybody wants to. Grain Valley has their set of rules, and Humboldt has a set of rules, or US 36 has rules, and everybody has their own set of rules that kind of ties everybody to their specific racetrack, where you got to change too much to go race somewhere else. So when I come up with this thing, and like I said, I talked to John Bowler, and me and John kind of kicked it around and took off with it, and then we wrote a set of rules, and everybody. Matter of fact, January the 12th. After everything was complete, the first set of rules had been released. We realized that, no matter how many times you read rules, no matter how many times you write rules, you forget something. And so we got together March 12th as the series for the first time. There was 14 of us there. There was representatives, there was tech officials from all 5 racetracks. There was track owners, track promoters, competition directors were all there, to help decide, finalize, and finish rules as a whole. So it's not been just one person. And I'm gonna be honest, I had a lot of people accuse me of I wrote the rules. Well, I kind of did, but I never had the final say on anything. It was the group as a whole that decided everything. There was lots of things that got changed after the finalization of what was pretty much done. And being straight up front, Lakeside kind of had some of the ruling in that. So, but it was all for the better to try and equal it out for everybody. Right. And here's the coolest thing about this entire series: you got Grain Valley, you got CMS, you got Lakeside, US 36, and Bethany, all on the same rules for the E-mods and for the pure stocks. Any night that, whether it be CMS, Grain Valley, Lakeside, whoever, US 36, any night that one of those tracks runs a special. The cool thing is the other tracks have all agreed they are not going to race that class that night.
They're communicating.
That way,
That's
yes.
awesome.
That way, everybody from the other 4 tracks will get a chance to travel. You're not going to have to change one single thing. You're going to go down there and be 100% legal, and you can help support the other tracks. That way, if Lakeside has a special, they don't get to see that 1 or 2 guys that's always in the front. You're going to have the competition come in from those other tracks, and we know how it all works. The first time you go, those guys ain't going to know how to figure out Lakeside right off the bat. Well, Lakeside guys might struggle at US 36, or they might struggle at Bethany. But they're all going to get a chance to go and not have to worry about Bob Curbs or anybody at any of the tracks, Dale Eaton or myself or Terry at Valley, Larry at Lakeside. They're not going to have to worry about those guys going, well, this ain't legal or that ain't legal, or it's just racing as a whole for those 2 classes without being sanctioned and running under a set of sanctioned rules. It's a great thing. It is. It's a great thing.
2 big series coming up this summer: the Top Gun and the Top Dog series.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What can we expect as far as you just talked on the difference in the different tracks and different techs as far as get into what the racers can expect as far as the adherence to this rules package. And let me go ahead and go off script a little bit. And of course, we love all our viewers. We love all our guests that have been on the show previously. But this is, of course, a question that some teams have brought up. But what would you say to the guys that said, well, the rules are just getting too complicated, or the rules are too, it's too impossible to enforce all this?
It's not impossible to enforce it all. What we have to try to remember is we have to write rules that we can take at the racetrack. There are some rules, and I'll bring one up, a lightweight piston rule. Everybody's going, well, how are you going to know that? Well, you know what? There's some nights when we're going to have to we'll choose a night and say, tonight we're going to find out what's there. If this guy's winning a lot or that guy's winning a lot, of course we got to put him under the magnifying glass because everybody's going to immediately say he's cheating somewhere. Well, that's the tech official's job, is to figure out, is he or isn't he? And if you run a scope in the motor, or you tear a head off the motor and you bore it, stroke it, CC the heads, whatever we're going to do, with a beret, then that's what we do. And if you can't find it, all you can do is say, look, guys, I can't cut the driver in half and see what's working in there. That's one thing I can't do. But the techs have all got together, and just kind of backing up a little bit. I work a lot with Brian Butler down at Lucas Oil and Bobby Curbs at CMS, and of course Dale Eaton from up at US 36, and now I've got to know Larry pretty good at Lakeside, and there's a lot of knowledge there. Bob Curbs has raced for years. Brian Butler has an endless amount of technology, and you guys will talk to Ernie later. A lot of that technology comes from Ernie in the late model series, and some of the stuff that goes on down there that Brian gets to see weekly that we don't get to see. And we've all been, the last couple years, we've really been talking a lot together behind the scenes, all the tech officials. And that's kind of what's brought a lot of this about, is, we're going, man, we just need to, as tech officials, we need to just make it the same. And so the last few years, we've been communicating a lot. We know things, what guys are doing from one week to the next week, who's get caught with what, and what we should be looking for. Hey, I found this or he found that, and we've been communicating a lot, and it's just made a world of difference for us. As a matter of fact, we even have a page on Facebook now for all the tech officials and track officials that are part of the Mokan series to go to Facebook. So if we have any questions, tech concerns, we can talk about those, in private, and we're going to know what everybody's doing. Mm-hmm. And it's just a big plus all the way around for everybody.
I just have one more question. I'm going to let Mark hammer on you for a while.
All right.
What would you say the qualifications would be for somebody that's involved in teching or the head of tech at any given track?
Man, that's tough. It's really neat if a guy has some experience and has had some good teachers, you know. And over the years, I've had some pretty good teachers. I've learned a lot. Number one, you know, Dale Eaton is just an absolute plethora of knowledge when it comes to racing in cars, and I mean that guy just, it's crazy. As far as learning how to cheat things up and knowing what to kind of look for in some things, Carl Murphy,
Thumbs up.
that guy taught me a lot. So you know, there's a few guys out there that taught me a lot. My racing experience, you know, with my family, learned a lot. But you just kind of have to kind of watch and just pay attention, and you know, staying up with technology. That's our biggest problem today, is technology changes. Just, I mean, you know, we could talk about a camshaft today and that thing will change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it's just technology is what's killing us, in my first opinion. If we could control technology, and by the Mokan series and saying, look, we're going to put a set of rules together for 5 years. We're not changing nothing. You know, we're going to take
5 year. Those are 5-year rules.
5-year rules. The only thing that we may look at in the next 3 years is in the pure stocks is allowing a fabricated firewall, fabricated floor pan, because IMCA and USRA now allow that in their hobby cars. So any of those cars that would come available for sale, they're going to be coming. I mean, it's going to happen this year. As a matter of fact, they're out there right now. We need to look at that. You know, so these guys have a place to go buy a car. We know that these old G-body cars are getting fewer and farther between, so you know, we got to allow some of this stuff sooner or later. We have to allow it. Right. But it's just, we're going to look at that in 3 years. But other than that, yeah, the rules are 5 years, and we figure by doing that 5-year thing, we're taking a lot of the technology out of it, and we're keeping some of that money spending down, and that's what we got to do, especially in these two classes. We've got to keep some money out of them if we can.
Right. Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome, sir.
Mark, what do you got for me?
It's been kind of like the room of doom in NASCAR. You know, when you roll a car through there and, and look at the stuff. See, the technology thing, I remember back in the day, it used to be like traction control. And somebody would have like an instrument panel on their dashboard, and somebody would say, well, they got traction control running there, especially at like I-70 Speedway, you know, when they were running there a lot, because, you know, that was really important, or, you know, could help a guy out quite a bit. So is that, like you say, that technology part of it, you guys got to chase all the time? I mean, is that just like a technical bulletin you guys get a lot on, or what?
No, actually,
keep up to
actually, that's kind of, you know, back to the Brian Butler thing and Lucas Oil Speedway, and Ernie can talk to you guys about this later on. But you know, those late model guys, man, it's just, there's no end. Yeah. I mean, those guys are like NASCAR. They just have money that goes beyond the limits. And you know, anytime you can walk through a pit area and you see guys with laptops out on top of late models, and they're adjusted shock absorbers, you know, you're going, what? Really?
Yeah.
You know, and you're thinking, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing here? The average guy just, in some cases today, just cannot afford that.
You know, that's a question I'd like to ask you about too, because I know in the old days, like when you talk about, I mean, I know you're a huge fan of like Terry Bibbins and the guys that would run IMCA dirt.
Yep.
And Terry, when he ran in '76, actually at Daytona, took an IMCA dirt car down to Daytona and actually put a car in that race and won, you know, got it up. I think he finished 9th, if I'm not mistaken, at the Daytona 576.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, the funny thing about it was in that race, they didn't change tires all day because they figured the pit crew wouldn't be able to do a tire change and get the tires right. They'd slow them down. So they finally got a caution flag, but they put the stagger on wrong, put them on the opposite side, and Terry took off. He told me when he took it down into turn 1 and then into turn 2, he nearly drove it into Lake Lloyd on the backstretch. And that caution flag actually set up the end of that race with David Pearson and Richard Petty. And Pearson ended up winning the race. Those two were banging and bumping each other. If you remember right, they came to the stop in the infield. But I guess the long way around this is that thinking about how in the old days, and I know things have advanced, and obviously things go forward, but you know, because now everything's built from the ground up. Where you used to be able to just get a car, get the thing out, put it on a track, put some roll bars on it, get its safety set,
Right.
And just go out and put it on a hauler where you pull it behind your car.
Right.
And go run it at a track.
Well,
and now there's just so much money involved in that thing.
You know, the thing is that we got a lot of guys, they complain, man, it's like, and I'll kind of plug Humboldt a little bit. You know, Battle of the Bull Ring race. I get together with Brian Butler and Bobby Curbs and my brother Russell, and we do the tech that weekend. And, you know, you see B-mods, they're coming in there, and you know, these big double stacker trailers and all this.
Yeah.
You know, and you look at that and you're going, for a B-mod, really? Wow. You know, and I remember everybody, you know, when we was racing, that's all everybody, if somebody had an enclosed trailer, we thought they were special.
Right.
You know, you're
Exactly.
on open wheel trailers, you know, I'm like, phew. But, you know, you look at some of the stuff these guys have and you're thinking, where have we went wrong? You know, what are we doing? But the thing everybody has to remember is they can have a $1 million hauler. That hauler is, I've never seen a hauler win a race yet.
Right. You know,
Right.
You know,
trailers don't win races.
and I've seen some of the baddest cars come out of some of them haulers in the world, and 5 laps in the race they're done.
Right.
So you know, it's people guys got to remember that it's not always what you see,
Yeah.
it's what the end result is.
Well, it's kind of like in Cup, you know, and all these guys in any division, really any racing division, where you want to go faster, and they talk about equalizing cars, and the technology starts going up, and at the same time, the price to get into the sport goes up, and then you got to get sponsors to
Exactly.
be a part of that.
Exactly.
And it's like when you get to a point where you let technology stop and don't go any further with it, and just make it something that's affordable for more people to get involved in the sport.
That's exactly what we're trying to do with the E-Mod series and the pure stock classes. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is take some of that money away from it. You know, whether we've done the right thing, the wrong thing, I guess we're going to see. I think it, and all the track guys, all the track promoters and track owners have all said, you know, this has been a great thing, and they're really looking forward to it, and so am I. You know, but yeah, technology is just it's killed racing. I mean, look at the price of shocks. Look at what guys spend on shocks for A mods today or B mods today, and I'm like, man, we just stand back and just kind of shake my head and say, why?
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But even A mods, you know, we could take the shocks out of A mods and save guys literally thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about guys wanting to dope tires. Some guys say, yeah, let's just let us dope them. Then you ain't got to tech it no more. Well, you know, that's all good and great, but you know, if you've ever read the back of some of those cans of that tire dope and read that stuff and what it is, that stuff's not good for you. I mean, it's just for the general person that's messing with it. You know, I hope you're wearing a mask and gloves and a suit and keeping that stuff off of you. Because
That's
you know,
one thing
I don't
that
want to
always-
breathe it personally.
That's one thing always confused me about kart racing, is that especially when you have kids involved in that, why they wouldn't make a compound tire that
Exactly.
was a spec instead
Exactly.
of having to have these kids and their families, you know, don't
Be exposed to that
of
kind of thing. Yeah, there's no need for it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, there's guys out there that say, well, if you just let us do it, then you ain't got to tech it no more. Well, you're right. You know, and then we're right back to, you know, as you guys stated earlier, you know, we're going to have late models in pure stock.
Right.
So you know, you got to have tech. And guys say, well, Carl, you need to clarify this rule better. You need to rewrite that rule. I said, you know, here's my deal. When I have to write a rule book, or anybody has to write a rule book like NASCAR's, where I tell you that the bolt that goes through your lower left bracket on your lower left arm has to be exactly 3 1/4 inches long. It has to be a grade 8. It has to be fine thread. It has to be, you know, when I have to get breaking down rules to that extent,
Yeah.
I'm just going to shake my head and say, have fun, fellas. See you later.
Yeah.
I'll come watch.
It kind of takes the fun out of the whole thing.
It does take it out of it. And
Because,
I-
you know, getting together, that's been the whole thing, like you were talking about with your friends and, you know, when you guys start out racing and so forth, is you get some buddies together and you get the car and they all work together, which is pretty much the same now, but it just seems like the cost factor has just raised it up so,
It
that
has.
bar up so
It
far
has.
that a lot of guys who probably be grassroots racers and stuff and take it from there are, you know, finding it more of a challenge to try to keep up with that.
Yes.
And then, like you said, I think keeping a hold of the rule changes over a certain period of time, because guys find that, you know, that if rule changes happen too quickly or too often, at the same time, it's kind of a tough balance for you guys, because you're trying to even out the field and make sure that somebody with something else is coming up, but you're making sure that's not going to make too much of an advantage.
I'll tell you.
But at the same time, you're trying to make sure that the cost doesn't, like a guy puts his car in the garage at the end of the season and then at the next year he's got like, okay, there's a whole new set of rule
Yeah,
packages.
he shouldn't have to buy. Yeah, he shouldn't have to buy a new carburetor, or a
Right.
new intake, or he shouldn't have to. I mean, he should be able to keep what he's got,
Right.
and basically and focus on the car. You know, not I don't need to build a new engine. I can just refresh what I have. I don't need this. I can refresh in that. I can, you know, and focus on the chassis of the car and making the car work better. You know, and learn more about what you have. That's what guys need to do. We've got to stop them from spending money. But you know, of course, they'll spend money to buy some special little trinket or thing that somebody advertises this is going to make you go faster, and they'll spend money on that. And never say and they'll never say a word. Right. But if I say, well, no, we're not going to spend money on that. We're going to get rid of this, and they immediately, because it's going to cost them $20 to get rid of that, they have a stroke. Mm-hmm. But I understand. We gotta. Anytime you change rules, somebody's going to spend money. Whether some guys don't, but some guys do, and it just is what it is. But
it's like a Smokey Unique. You got to chase those guys too, because there's always somebody. The story about Smokey. One year, he had a car that raced at Daytona, and he was talking about how they had never made a pit stop for gasoline late part of the race. And they went over to Tech and they tore the car down. They took the gasoline tank off the car. And they said, well, did you find anything? The officials were like, no, we didn't find a thing. And he goes, are you done with my car yet? And he goes, yeah, we're done. And Smokey got in that car, fired it up, and drove away. He says he could have drove straight over to Tampa and back. So the deal was he put the gasoline in the frame rails. And so they didn't know it. And, it's like this. But it's the old saying, you're not cheating until you get caught.
Right. That's right.
But that's the
exactly
thing about
right.
it is guys are always pushing the limits on everything until they finally find it. And then it's I got DQ'd.
We were talking about the guys that'll always find some trinket that's supposed to give them an extra push. And I remember when Dad was running his 360 AFCS car, he said, if I added up all the 10 extra horsepower, all these different parts were supposed to give me, I think my car would have about 2,000 horsepower.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's just, like I say, things have evolved so much from when my brothers and I first started racing back in my high school days. I helped a buddy of mine that had a car, and you knocked the glass out of it, put a cage in it, you built an engine, basically in your garage. You threw a camshaft at it, threw some tires and wheels on it, and you went and raced the thing.
Right.
And you didn't have $500 in the whole car.
Exactly.
And today, $500 won't buy you a set of tires.
Yeah. And you find the same thing guys chasing the Cup Series too, because they started out NASCAR as the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing, which meant stock car. You had to buy a car off the showroom floor.
That's right.
And any parts you used on that car had to be available through a car dealer only, not through a fab shop or not through some kind of speed place or manufactured whatever. You had to buy that car. You go into that parts place in that dealership only, and those cars were stock only. Exactly.
If I remember right, that's why Pontiac started running the Hemi, was to allow Richard Petty to run it in the series before.
And so many changes,
Fran said that it's a no-go.
And then that's what manufacturers started getting in that deal, because of course then it was win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Sell on Monday, that's right.
And so they would get involved into it too, but then there was always this challenge of, and that's exactly why NASCAR was started in the first place, was that they were trying to equalize that series because of the fact that so many people were cheating.
Right.
There were also people that would run a race and the promoters would run off with the money, before the payout at the end of the race for the drivers, and they were gone. Those guys were disappeared. So trying to make a level playing field. So that's kind of that's just a tough deal to be to go through Tech and keep it even and trying to do all that at the same time. There was one thing I was going to ask you too real quick, is the safety features. Somebody actually wrote in, do you guys have to Tech for any safety? I know there's a standard you guys have to set for whatever.
We normally, at the beginning of the year, anybody that shows up the tracks throughout the year, that's new drivers, whatever, we normally have some sort of a Tech sticker that we put on the car as well. With the tracks that I'm at, we do anyway. So that we know that those guys have been teched, and we've looked at helmets, dates on helmets, dates on belts. We try to look at seats to make sure how they're mounted. Do you or do you not have a Hans device? What kind of neck restraint do you have? How's the window net mounted? That kind of thing. A lot of guys will mount window nets to the tin, we don't want them mounted to the 10. We want that window net mounted to the cage.
Yeah.
If that 10 goes bye-bye, so's your window net. Well, now your arm's out here somewhere. And
Now, for laypersons, what do you mean by the 10?
as far as the interior tin of the car,
Okay.
a lot of guys will strictly rivet it right to the interior tin of the car. Well, the interior tin is not attached to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, in all reality, it's really not. So, a car gets upside down, does a couple rolls, that interior tin could be gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why we want it attached to the actual cage. So we'll make some corrections with guys, and I've learned over the years that you just don't tell guys, if you don't fix it right now, you're done. Say, look, you got it next week. Bring it back to me. Let me look at it next week. Let's make sure we get this fixed.
I'm sure safety inspections are one of the things at the top of your priority list.
Yeah.
But we had a question, and also, what would you say is the hardest thing overall to tech for or to catch?
Without giving away any secrets about how to hunt.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Exactly.
Oh man, it's probably the hardest thing to catch. Would be tearing engines down. Physically tearing engines apart. We have all the procedures. Darlow Mulder in the last few years has taught me a lot of stuff through USRA. We have all the procedures, all the dial indicators. I've got somewhere just in my stuff alone that I've purchased myself, tools I've made myself, built myself. I have somewhere around 10 grand involved just in tech equipment that belongs to me personally. You can only do so much before you actually have to tear an engine down and physically look at it. But Darlow's taught me a lot. So there's lots of little tricks, crate motors. We can put dial indicators on camshafts and check at specific lift timing, and check to see if cams have been cheated. All kinds of stuff like that. So, but pistons, rods, without tearing engines down, you got a guy that's got an engine put together with a windage tray in it. It's hard to look up in there and see, what pistons might be in there, what rods might be in it without tearing the head off of it. So that's the hardest thing.
How important is pre-tech, do you think, and how much do you think that would save time for the
Yeah, as a
tech
matter of
crew?
fact, I'm glad you brought that up. I just talked to Ryan Whitworth this week and told him I want to kind of change the way that I'm doing things at Humboldt this year, and I want to change the same thing at US 36 and at Bethany. I want to start doing more pre-tech earlier in the night and tell guys, look, hey, get that fixed before feature time. Feature time, if you finish in this, in these top positions, come see me, because I want to make sure you got that fixed. I think it'll just prevent in the evening times. The girls are like everybody. When the night's over and they got to write checks or put money in envelopes, they want to get out of there like everybody else. And if I've got guys held up in the tech barn for an hour after that, everybody's got to wait till we're done. So if I can speed it up by doing more pre-tech in the beginning of the night, that's exactly what I'm
So
going to
you
do.
definitely do think pre-tech saves time
Yeah,
at the end
I
of the
do.
day.
I really do.
That's cool.
How do you feel on the personnel? Do you feel like the tracks are in a good personnel level? Are they staffed efficiently enough to take care of this?
I think so. At Humboldt, there's myself and my brother, and of course, I get Renee to help me. She's my new helper.
Yeah. Thanks, Renee.
She helps, the smart end of the stick. I make her hold the smart end. I just read the numbers. But yeah, I think the tracks are especially at US 36 and Bethany. John's really kind of taking care of us. There's going to be 3 of us there most of the time. So at those 2 tracks, there's going to be 3 tech officials pretty much every weekend. I know there will be some nights Dale's not there that I'll be there, and nights I won't be there, Dale will be there. And Mitch is going to be up, and the guy that was at ACR has stepped on board, and he's going to be at US 36 with us this year. So, we got 3 guys up there, and I'm not going to brag a lot, but I will. I would probably tell you that US 36 and Bethany will probably have the stiffest, most stringent tech of all the tracks because there's so many of us. And Dale's got all the tools and equipment that it takes, and it's just going to be a great deal. And both those being IMCA tracks, and then we get the involvement with Dave Brin from IMCA, and those guys, the technology and stuff that they bring in, and the knowledge that they bring in, it just helps us become better techs. I mean, that's what we got to have, is that supporting group behind us. that can feed us, the little things in emails and pictures and stuff. I have pictures on my phone that I could show you that you just stand back and shake your head. And we see things on the internet, guys posting pictures of their cars, and I'm going, well, that's not going to work. But I've learned to, over the years, not say anything, just let it go. And then when they come to the track, say, okay, dude, come here, let me show you something. And they're going, well, how do you know that? Well, it was wide open on your page. You took a picture of it and put it out there for everybody to see. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. Really enjoy it. And like I say, people either love me or hate me. If you're the winner and you get disqualified, you hate me. But the guy that's second that night loves me. So.
Loves you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, do you have anything else for Carl? Carl, is there anything else you'd like to do? We'd like to provide a platform for the race teams to,
The only thing is, the tech officials, like I said, we've all got together. We've all kind of talked about how we're going to tech things together as a group. Anytime, any one of those tech officials, we're all going to have our phones on us. If you're at your racetrack and you have a question about how you're teching something or something that you find, we've said, hey, look, call one of us. Call me, call Dale, call Terry, call Larry, somebody, call Bob, and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? And that way we're doing things as a group the same way. And like I say, then we've got our own tech forum on Facebook. It's a private forum that we can get into and we can discuss things, and that way we can make a decision, of what it should be or what it shouldn't be. And like I say, it's just going to be better for everybody, I think. Like I say, I have to. All the guys who have given me the opportunities, I've had the chances over the years since the late '90s to work. Number one, some of the biggest races in the Midwest. First biggest race I ever worked was for Brent Martin and the guys at West Plains Motor Speedway. I got to go down and work the $10,000 to win B-Mod show down there. Of course, Humboldt, Ryan and Renda, and those guys, just fantastic people, and John Bowler and everybody. The guys at Lakeside, Dennis Shrout. Those guys have all given me the chances, and it's just been a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Hopefully I get to do it for a few more years.
Well, Carl, we appreciate you coming on. Appreciate all your insight and all you're doing for the sport, buddy.
You bet.
Really do.
I enjoy it.
Before I turn it back over to Mike, I did want to mention a few things here. We're going to do a couple shameless plugs. Like I said, we do have the World of Wheels show this weekend. Mike and I are going to be broadcasting from Bartle Hall live tomorrow night. And we have the Carb and the Carb Hall of Fame section there. We have a plethora of cars, from old midgets from the 30s to mod lights to junior sprints to go-karts. Come on down and check it out. It's a great time. Like I said, the I-70 Motorsports Park will have their section there as well. Look for upcoming shows with Mark and I doing a segment called Honoring Our Past, which we're going to be interviewing the 2019 Hall of Fame inductees. Kind of a round table, which kind of an open discussion, which should be a great time. And we have Snake Saturday Parade March 16th, which everybody that is in Kansas City racing community, I'm sure you're aware of what Snake Saturday is. If you're not, I'll post some links. Check it out. We're going to have a great float there. And I'll close on what I open with, which again is the public hearing March 13th, Berry Acres. North of Odessa on Highway 131 at 7 p.m. to express your support for I-70 Speedway. So we appreciate all of our viewers. I'm going to turn it back over to Mike. I think we have Ernie Leftwich lined up.
Again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
It's a lot of fun.
thank
Got a lot
you.
of racing stories and
Mark,
swap
thanks
back
for-
and forth.
Heck yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Justin, I was looking at some stuff the other day, or actually last night. I was looking over some history of the area here, the racing, so forth. And Carb, real quick, I was going to mention this because if anybody was thinking about becoming a member of Carb, it's a really cool deal. There's so many tracks that are Carb tracks, and what that means is they have Carb come out every once in a while through the year. And if you're a carb member, you get in free that night. And basically, within 2 nights of 2 tracks, you pay for that. It pays for
Really,
itself.
within one night, and most because
Yeah.
$15 membership. I mean, it's around $15 for one night of racing, and if you sign up as a carb member, we have 5 carb nights now, or 5 supporting carb tracks. So it pays for itself, really, and there's benefits that go along with it.
A lot of fun activities. You guys have the picnic, the bowling thing. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely encourage everybody to get involved in that.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely.
Thanks for plugging, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. No problem at all. And you guys are going to be down at World of Wheels. Like I say, Junior's going to be down there. So that's going to be a pretty cool deal.
Okay. We're gonna get set up.
I'll have to talk to you about IndyCar sometime as well.
Oh my gosh.
That was fun going to the museum up there.
Oh, man.
That was a great time.
Yeah, I did a little IndyCar stuff too. That was pretty cool.
You've got a drink. You don't need no water or anything.
I'm
Anybody
good.
need a drink? Sure.
Are
Peach tea.
you paused for a minute? Are we on?
No, we're still live.
Okay, cool.
This is the way we
Okay.
do it. I mean, heck,
I'll
you
hand
know.
the phone back to Mike. How about it?
Well, I wanted to tell you about. What's that? Okay.
Set us up on voice.
Well, at any rate,
Got
this
you, buddy?
I was going to say the series
I'm
a lot
gonna
of
go
history
ahead
with
and,
racing.
put you on
I was
speaker
looking at
here,
this
get
deal where
everything arranged, make sure
looking
we
back
can
at
hear you
Lakeside
on, the
Speedway,
speaker.
everybody's
All right.
talking about how AJ
Okay.
Foy got his
All right, here we
first
go.
professional win at
Olympic, wasn't it?
Olympic Stadium back in 1957 on May 12th, I believe
Yeah.
it was. But also Mario Andretti raced at Lakeside Speedway, the old track.
Really?
Johnny Rutherford was a regular there.
Yeah.
His wife had passed away recently, so a tough deal for him.
Yeah.
But Johnny was a regular. There are a lot of guys that ran, were regulars at Indy, would run
Absolutely.
in this area.
Absolutely. Olympic all the time.
Absolutely. And the State Fair Motor Speedway as
Yeah.
well, in Sedalia. So,
Quite a storied history.
Ernie,
Here
do we
you
got
go.
you on there, buddy? Just doing a little
Yes.
tester.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, we just want to check with your wife and see if she can hear that okay. If not, we'll move it up.
Hey, guys, we're going to sneak out.
Yes, sir. Carl?
all right, Carl.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Mark, we'll do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, dear, for coming. Bye-bye, dear.
See you guys.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. Hey, thank you very much.
I'll tell you a
Okay.
story sometime about Florence Henderson and IndyCar, and then also hate to drop names, but right when I was at Gateway one year, when the kart and the IRL series had broken
Yeah.
up, and I was in Victory Lane there with Michael Andretti, and I turned around and interviewed Mario.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
then
my.
guess who his car owner was? At that time it was Newman Haas,
Yeah.
Paul Newman.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And I
That was-
turned around and said, "Hey, Paul, how about that win?" And he goes, "How about, isn't that a kick in the pants?" I still got that one on tape.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. That was a pretty
Yeah.
cool deal.
Well, that's one good thing about what I do. I wanted to put those pictures up too, Justin.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So we're getting ready to
Just a
talk
minute,
to
Ernie. We're coming.
Ernie
buddy.
Leftwich
You're
here in just a
fine, you're
minute.
fine.
We did this last time and it seemed to work pretty good here.
So Mike's busy putting up some.
Like I say, it's not a professional studio, but it works.
Oh, hopefully I'm smiling in that picture, Mike.
No, you're reading. Boy, that one there is sure.
Well, I'm going to make a couple of plugs since just before we put you on here, Ernie, talking about I-35 Speedway. We are scheduled to have a practice on March 2nd and then March 9th, and then we'll start off our season on March 16th with the McCarthy Auto Group season opener, weekly racing, and of course we're a USRA facility, so we look forward to having you guys out there all year long at Winston, Missouri. So we'll make it. It's always a fun deal. And carb night. We've got a carb night scheduled. We've even got some races are pretty cool. Mike Tanner Memorial Race. We had the Caster Celebration, and of course the Gary Davis Super 66 Stock Car Special, and we're going to honor Mudcat, who passed away as well. So a lot of cool stuff, and of course Bud Wilson and all the stuff that they do there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just to let you know about that.
Sounds
And 18
great.
and under get in free all year long. And we're going to have a free race this year,
18
too.
and under.
A free all year long. 18
Yeah.
and under. If you're there, come out, Ernie, and bring anybody that's 18 and under to I-35. We'll get you in free.
There you go, Ernie.
I don't guarantee I'll get you in free without any problem.
Okay, we've got Ernie Leftwich. I hope that's pronounced correct, right, Ernie?
That's good enough, Mike. That's good enough.
And Ernie is the racing director for the MLRA Late Model Racing Series, a former flagman, at several of the local tracks. I say that by down south local tracks. And he's a guy that even is so involved in racing that even when he has a weekend off, while he's working somewhere else doing something for either Lucas Oil, Late Models, or somebody. And Ernie, man, it sounds like you're busy most of the time.
Yeah, we try to stay busy. This MLR8 gig and then Lucas Oil Speedway, between the two, keep me pretty busy. And like you said, on weekends off with the Lucas Oil MLR8 series, anytime Lucas Dirt, the national series, needs help, whether it be within tech or just a guy running around on a four-wheeler getting cars to the lineup shoot. Being a full-time employee, it's easier to call that guy and get him. He's got a job within racing. It's easier to get him off of work to come.
Right.
Now, Ernie, I remember because our show was sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts when O'Reilly was a title sponsor for the MLRA series, and that's when I kind of ran into Cowboy and Harriet when they were doing that deal. So they're quite a pair to with that MLRA series.
Oh yeah. Those two got me started with the MLRA. I've been with the MLRA 23 years. This will be my 23rd year. Started in '96, and my first. I was telling Mike today, talking to him a little bit when he called to see if I would do this deal, and the first couple of events, actually the first couple of years, I did a few events each year, and Harriet and Cowboy, Cowboy was kind of quiet until you got to know him, but Harriet, she kind of got to help together and all that stuff, and they're great people. I learned a lot off of them, and they're the ones that give me a shot to do this deal. I've loved late models since I can remember, when I first started going racing, and man, when I was a kid and they started that MLRA series down there with Randy Mooningham, and I think it was Ken Esri down there the first couple of years before they sold to Harriet and Cowboy. Man, as soon as I figured out what that was, I wanted to be a part of it as soon as I could be.
Yeah. I know we talked on the phone, and you were telling me that at 4 years old,
Yeah,
you were with your uncle David Greenlee, and you were at a track.
No. My uncle is Jim Rainey.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Dave Greenlee actually owned the Speedway in Nevada, Missouri, Nevada Speedway. And yeah, I can remember my earliest years being 4 years old going. And a lot of reason I remember that is my cousin, which was Jim Rainey's son. He was born in '81. And he was born in April. And I remember having to miss a couple of races because of, with the baby being born and stuff like that. But at that point in time, I was the only boy in the family and would go to the racetrack. And when the other kids were up playing with their footballs or rolling down the hill, Ernie was sitting there watching cars going around in circles.
So do you remember your first foray into racing and why motorsports? A lot of times I ask guys like, why they got into racing and what was their first real experience and what was it that kept you in the sport?
Just sitting here thinking, I guess just at that point in time, me sitting here thinking about it, at that point in time, it would have been just the mud getting flung up into the grandstands and the loud cars,
The dust in your hair?
I don't know if you've ever been to Nevada, but you sit so close to the racetrack, even being on the top row, when those cars would enter the turn in turn 1 or come off at turn 4, early in the night when there was some mud in the racetrack, sometimes you would get dirt up that high. So I don't know if it was that, and then as I got a little older, once again, the late models coming around, and I remember 86, 87, 88, my childhood hero, I mean, the guy's still my hero, to be honest with you, the Ron Bolin, ex-junior car out of Fort Scott, Kansas.
Absolutely.
That guy there won a lot of championships between Nevada, Adrian, and Pleasanton, Kansas, Lynn County Speedway. But, man, that guy could do stuff. I remember that's a lot of the reason I kept going back to the racetrack. That guy could do stuff nobody else could, and everybody else out there, you know, I didn't know at the time turning 7,000 RPM, and Boland's got her on the top side turning about 10. So, and that's just something, that loud noise and seeing someone do what he could do behind the wheel, you know, at that young age, 10 to 14 years old. Just remembering that and seeing that was a lot of excitement, and that's I feel like that's what kept me around the sport. And then you know, between playing some sports, a lot of it was soccer and stuff. In my hometown, there wasn't much more to do other than go to the racetrack and play soccer on Tuesday and Thursday nights.
You're talking about bowling. Every time I'd go down to Adrian, it seems like, and to shoot video or whatever, Denny Crooks would always be asking me, he'd say, was bowling there? Was bowling there?
That was a heck of a bowler, too.
And the thing that I absolutely loved about Adrian was he could go down on the infield, and I swear, I'm thinking it was down there coming out of turn 2. You were absolutely no more than about 6 feet from the cars on the track.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That was close.
And I mean, you could hear them valve lifters humming and carrying on, and, you know, and I mean, you could see a smile on their face, or, you know, if they were using finger
Working
signals.
the wheel, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Just, boy, I miss that. Gosh, I miss that. That was a lot of fun. Ernie, at a fairly young age, though, you finally started wanting and talking about being a flagman. Man, you could do it like somebody else could do it, and you finally got a shot at it. Who was it that gave you that shot, and at what track?
Well, we brought up Dave Greenlee's name there earlier, and that's the earliest owner of the Speedway that I can remember here in Nevada. And then when he was about, you know, when he got out of it, right there, I think it was 95, I had made, the Sism family had bought that, and my family was real good friends with the Sisms, and still are. The Sism family bought the Nevada Speedway, and Doug Sism was the flagman there, and I've known Doug since I was a little kid. Well, I smarted off to him one night about flagging, and you know, I was a senior in high school, and boy, he here you go, let's see what you got, you know. And it wasn't nothing to try to impress anybody. It's just Doug could be doing other things if someone else wanted to step up and do it. And he kept me under his wing there for a year or two, and then pretty much turned me loose. And I feel like, you know, I learned from one of the best. You know, in our area, I kind of feel like I learned from the best. And then, man, when I spent there a year with Nevada, I got to make the move over to Humboldt. You had Carl Flowers in there, but he's been at Humboldt for quite a few years. But Ron Wentworth over at Humboldt, I was trying to, I guess, widen my path there a little bit. So Humboldt's only about an hour and 15 minutes from Nevada, and got to know Doug and Ron Wentworth were pretty good buddies. And Ron was needing some help at Humboldt, so he hired me to run the front straightaway over there for him. And Doug done some flagging for him over there, and then that lasted about a year, and Doug needed to put some attention back over towards Nevada. So then I got hired to flag at Humboldt, and I spent a couple years over there. And then just between all that was doing a little bit of MLRA when she needed help, and helping with that. So that's kind of how I got started with flagging, and then just I would get a track here and there. Hey, my flagman's got to be gone. You know, can you come and fill in for me here and there? And then pretty close after, you know, I got my start at Nevada. Then I was over at Humboldt there for a couple of years. Then Wheatland Raceway come about, and at that time the Sisms were kind of, I think, separating. Like one brother bought the other brother out, so that left Doug going to Wheatland Raceway at that time, what's now Lucasville Speedway, and we kind of split ways, and I took some time off of flagging, was just filling in where needed be and helping out with MLRA, and then finally just started working with MLRA until Lucas had bought the Speedway out, you know, over at Wheatland Raceway.
You mentioned a while ago that it had been 23 years that you had been involved with MLRA and now with the Lucas Oil late models. Does it really seem like that long? I mean, I said something here a while back about there are no overnight successes.
Right.
Correct.
As much as
Yeah, overnight success. It only took me 20 years to get there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, if a guy just going every day and thinking about it, it don't feel like that. And of course, honestly, I don't feel my age either, but I sit there and try to figure out. Missy Holman, she's been with me for a lot of those years as far as working at a weekly racetrack or filling in somewhere. And then now Missy works for us full time with the Lucas Oil MLRA series. But I sit there and try to figure out how many years me and Missy's been together. And I did this last year, and I'm thinking me and Missy's been almost 20 years together, not just MLRA, but just weekly racetracks, you know, from Pleasanton, Kansas to Butler. I think she'd done some stuff at Adrian in the past with that, you know, that would have been years ago. And just and then filling in with MLRA until she'd become full time. And you sit there and think about the number of years you've done it with just you two as a couple running something, and then you sit back and, oh my gosh, I've been doing this a lot longer than what I thought, you know. So, yeah.
I know that feeling.
Like that.
Now, I was going to ask you that flagman deal. Is there, for two questions on that, was it tougher than you thought it was when you're sitting there watching them? And the second thing is, was there ever a moment or two when you had an incident right there that kind of took your breath away up there in the flag stand?
Well, I think anybody that does it, to answer the second part of that first, you've been up there that many years and done it that many years, you always get an instance you can always, you know, come back to. And mine was at Humboldt, Kansas. A car got upside down, and he wasn't under the flag stand, but he was right in front of the flag stand. And, man, that kind of, I told myself that could have been in the flag stand.
Yeah,
you know?
right,
So,
exactly.
but as far as, what was your first part of that question again?
Well, when you're watching them, the first time you were looking at, you know, Doug doing I think you were talking about Doug
Yes.
was the flagman.
Yep.
And you were looking at him doing it. When you got up there, was it like, well, yeah, this is a little bit harder than I thought it might be?
Yeah, well, and I think I got a pretty good answer to that, and anybody that does it will know exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, like you said, sitting in the grandstands, man, you can see a lot more, especially if you're sitting on that top row sitting back, or up in the suites or whatever. And you know, in those days from the flag stand, it was hard to see everything. I felt like I'd done a pretty good job and could see a lot what going on, except for like racetracks that pitted on the middle, like he was talking about Adrian. Then you kind of needed some corner workers, or you're hoping your scorers, like Missy. I talked about Missy. Like Missy, I'd worked with her long enough. I trusted her. She thought she seen someone take someone out or tap someone, maybe needed to be warned or something. You work with those people long enough, and you can build trust up in them to make that call that you didn't see or didn't feel comfortable making. So, yeah, no on that situation. But now, so like on my MLRA events, some events I call from Lucas Oil Speedway when they need a hand or something like that, or anywhere. I've helped Ryan with his BMOD Nationals last year, calling the races over there. But sitting back, when you're up in that tower, you can see so much more than you can on that flag stand. So now a lot of racetracks they've taken their flagman, for instance, so that's what I would have been, and they've just taken one of their other officials, like either used somebody that they could just put in the flag stand and wave that flag. And for the guys that's still making the calls, I don't mean any disrespect here, but we've put people that's capable of making a call that maybe the guy in the tower missed as well. Is you got that guy out there waving that flag, but the guy in the tower pretty much is making those calls just because he's sitting back far enough that he can see pretty much everything that goes on. So, you know, from being on the grandstands to the flag stand and now up in the tower making those calls, being up in the tower, man, it's so much easier being there, you know. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting.
That's just what I was going to say a while ago when you were talking about the early days. That was before the flagman had radio communications with anybody else.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're pretty much on an island by yourself,
Oh,
so
I
to
remember
speak.
one time, Ernie, I remember there, I was at Lakeside Speedway, and Jim Summers was the flag man, and one night somebody got so upset with him, they actually chased him out of the track.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody that mad at me, you know. And that's one thing, you know. I've always said in my driver's meeting, and in my younger years, I wasn't scared to get in a brawl at all, and not that I wanted to, but them drivers and crew guys, they're mean.
Especially down south.
Yeah, from my first driver's meeting, man, I'm not going to see everything. I'm not going to make the right calls. It's just like a basketball game or a football game. You come talk to me, talk like grown-ups and bring me your points, and I'll do what I can to make it better next time. But no, it's that flagman job or race director's job. It's a tough one, and you don't want to make somebody mad. You need that guy next week to be there and supporting what you're doing.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I kind of remember the MLRA of old. I mean, I'm talking Alan Vaughn, Al Perkey,
Oh, yeah.
Adrian Speedway, Nevada Speedway.
Yeah.
The series has really come a long way since those days. What are some of the changes that you see happening with the bigger names behind the series and the money that's there and involved, as well as the drivers and sponsors? Is it good, better, or bad from what you've seen?
I mean, I don't know. So it's kind of hard to say with the times and everything. I can't say that it's better than it was or worse than it was or anything like that. And I will say this, like the sponsorship stuff is, I feel like it's better. For one, the way Lucas has everything, we have what we call Team Lucas, and Team Lucas is your Geico, you know, those signs that you see at the racetrack. We've got a handful of them. K&N filters.
All over the infield.
I'm sorry, I'm off guard here, but those guys joined forces, and we got what we call Team Lucas there. And so with the Lucas deal, they've set up a deal, and this is like the corporate side of it. They've done a good thing putting that Team Lucas together. Those guys are there for a number of years, and going out and getting these I don't want to say they're smaller. It's just that they're not spending the amount of dollars that the Team Lucas people are. But that gets them people TV time. Now, our contingency sponsor, stuff like that, those guys have stepped it up too. As far as, I may step on some toes here, but like in years past, and even still today on a regional level, a lot of sponsors don't want to pay money to be a part of anything. They want to just put their product certificates out there and pass that out, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, man, for what we're doing to help get your product to be seen and get it out there, it's hard to do that for just some certificates. So the sponsor stuff, the marketing, I guess I would say, that stuff's, man, I've had to step up and do a little bit of that just for some of the smaller money amounts. And that is not an easy job. Like, I've been stressed over that for a couple months. The competition side of things, just like Carl touched on earlier, the technology is the big side of things as far as what's changed there. The technology is crazy, and trying to stay on top of that. And Mike, I told you earlier, I feel like if you miss a weekend, you're behind already, you know, so especially being in the dirt late model world, and then from the dirt late model world, all this stuff is passed down pretty much week in and week out to your modifieds, and honestly, you're starting to see some stuff, not exactly what we do in some of the stock car stuff, but man, some of that technology gets passed down.
We're speaking with Ernie Leftwich, the racing director for MLRA Late Model Racing Series. And Ernie, talking about that, you kind of touched on television a little bit. How much is that kind of propelled the series a little with sponsorship and money and so forth? You're seeing like pay-per-view or, you know, getting it on other, like, and the purse money that's going, like you're talking about travel money and $20,000 purses and so forth. Is the TV package part of that, or the pay-per-view helped in promoting that part of it or getting that up to that level?
is where Ernie's old school. And I was telling Mike today, we talked a little bit about this. The pay-per-view, as far as the national stuff, that stuff's really good for the national side of things. And I'm sure for the regional side, at a point, it can be good too. But like I was telling Mike today, you know, where I'm seeing and where some of my racetrack promoters see is, let's say for instance, I'm in Davenport, Iowa, and I've got a Lucas Oil MLRA show there, and it's a regional show. We usually get 35 late models on an average at that racetrack. And that's a 3,000 to win event. And say you got the World of Outlaws or Lucas Dirt somewhere, and their show is going to be either televised live or it's going to be on pay-per-view live somewhere. So where this is hurting regional racing and or just your regular Friday or Saturday night racing, and my thoughts is, and I'm just telling you from my peers and what I hear is, and you see it on Facebook, why would I go spend $100 going to Davenport to watch them guys race, and it's just a regional level? I can sit at home and rent it for $30 a night, have 4 or 5 buddies over, drink beer, you know, feed my kids a steak dinner, and still not have $100 in it, and get to watch the national guys.
Yeah.
You know, so you know that's kind of what I hear and what I see on that. And, you know, for the national side of things, and then be able to get our sponsors' name and our product stuff out there, it's great for it. That's what it's great for, you know, and it's just, I don't know. There's two sides of it. I mean, I see the positive sides of it, and I see the negative sides of it. And it's just like the sponsorship dollar, you know. What I've struggled with, I was talking about sponsorship a while ago. Even though, like, MLRA is Lucas owned and all that, and we've got the Lucas name, when I go to a product sponsor and I'm looking for, you know, some money from them, they're telling me we've used our budget on the national level, you know, whether it be Lucas Dirt or World of Outlaw late models, we've used our money there. And so that makes, when you're out there getting that product sponsor, like I was talking about a while ago, they want to give you certificates and stuff. The certificates, you know, we don't give all of that dollar back that they've sponsored to the racer, but they get a pretty good chunk of that back as far as their points at the end of the year. And then we do MLRA as far as the regional series. We do tow package. It's called Winner Circle. So if you're in the top 10 with the Lucas Oil MLRA series, and you've got perfect attendance, you get $200 just to pull in the gate that night. That's outside of your winnings. That's, you know, that's not even included in that. So, and then on the national level, those guys, don't quote me on the exact price, but I think they get, if you're in the top 10 or 12 and you've got perfect attendance, those guys get like $700 just to show up.
Yeah.
So
So that's a great incentive.
Yeah, I got a question, Ernie.
yeah.
How far could you travel on $200 with one of them big rigs?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right, and we all understand that. And honestly, I had thought about MLRA. You know, is this $200 worth it? But when I go question my teams, and they're like, "That's $200 we wouldn't have elsewise."
I bet.
So,
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to shoot that money down.
Oh, no.
And then also, when I'm trying to sell a show to Lakeside or I-70 or Lake of the Ozarks or Davenport, Iowa, man, they want a list of names of guys that travel and follow your series. So, you know, that's something that helps keep those guys in there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they want some kind of guarantee. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but how much money does a track, or do they have to put up before the series will show at their facility?
Well, and most racetracks that call and want to show has either been on the schedule in the past or have been there and are presently there. Those people, it's for a $3,000 to win, you're looking right at about $20,000 purse. So that's what a $3,000 to win show costs. is right at 20 grand, and then you jump up and you want a 5,000 win Saturday night show. You're looking right about 24,000 bucks. So that's just to give or take a little bit, you know. If you get to add on to that, if you get a bunch of B main cars, a racetrack has to cover the tow money for that. So like if a guy don't make the A main, he gets $100 tow money on top of you know, it usually, like, let me step back here. The tow money is that $100. That's separate from our winner circle. That winner circle only goes to the top 10 with perfect attendance. And those guys that's getting that tow money, those guys are almost guaranteed in the show no matter what. Usually those guys will race their way in, but if not, they've got a provisional coming. But on like you was asking the total, the amount to get one of these events for 3,000 to win, you're looking at 20,000. And then if we say we've got 40 cars and you only race 22 in, and then you get 2 MLRA provisionals, everybody from 25th on back, they just get $100 when they go home that night.
Yeah. Now, if I understand this correctly, you're saying that a track, it wants an MLRA show, they got to put up 20 grand?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, what we're doing, we don't go out and say, hey, write me a $20,000 check just to get on my schedule. If you're wanting an event, you call me, we set a date up, we try to find a date that'll work and what makes sense for all of us involved. I've been doing this long enough now that I'm not going to let you have a date that I feel like is going to hurt you. If it's not going to work, I'm just going to tell you, man, there's a World Outlaw sprint car event 2 hours from you. We probably need to look for a different date. So, yeah, so if you're calling and wanting a date, all I'm going to ask of you, and you're a new racetrack or haven't been with us, or you're a new promoter, you just bought a racetrack, all we're going to ask is we have contract. All of our stuff is contract. We just ask you to go through our contract, have your lawyer go through it, sign it, return it, and we just take your word that when we get there on whatever date, the show's covered.
The show's covered. Okay.
Yep.
Whew, sounds like a lot of money. But anyway.
It is.
Like you say, you've been watching the show, and we just had Carl on, so I wanted to ask you about some of the tech stuff that has to go on with these late models. I cannot imagine, I mean, after being to East Bay and watching them run down there, and by the way, that was some fantastic racing. I think that Wednesday night show, that was one other thing I wanted to ask you. How much of those races do you actually get to see when you go do this tech work?
Well, first off, those races, it's different everywhere you go. East Bay's pretty easy. They got a set of grandstands right there by the tech barn.
Yeah.
So once you get one heat done and checked and rolled off, checking their tires, checking their, deck heights, stuff like that, the stuff we got to race, check for time trials, heat races and stuff like that, that goes pretty quick. You can just roll them on, go up and watch a few laps of the heat races, and then move on to your next heat or B main. And then once the A main rolls out, pretty much everybody's stopped and you get to go watch the whole thing. Usually on when I'm with Lucas Dirt, I am in the tech part of it, and so if a guy has a flat or we've had an accident and a guy comes to hot pit, my job during the A main is always watch that hot pit, and I've got a radio to the tower because, like, for a flat tire, you get 2 to 3 laps. Just depending on the size of the racetrack, all that stuff.
Right.
You get 2 caution laps for like a flat tire or whatever. So. That's my job to radio to the tower, let them know, hey, this guy don't have a flat, all 4 tires are up, you're good to go with your lineup, do whatever. And then also, again, if he does have a flat, I got to let him know, hey, he's got a right rear down, they're coming off with it, they're going back on with it, hey, he's on his way, so when it's a flat or something like that, we try to be good about it and get him back on the racetrack, but we also got to do it in a timely manner.
Yeah. I think I started out with one question and asked another, but anyway,
Yeah.
what is it really like teching these guys? Like Carl was saying, and we've kind of discussed a little bit, I think, before the show started, in that, man, the money and resources that especially these Lucas Oil guys have, they've got people out there researching this stuff to come up with ideas about suspension, motors, whatever. Man, that's got to be a nightmare. And how many tech people are at a Lucas Oil late model show a night?
Well, and to start off with, motor-wise, there's not on an open late model. There's really no tech on an open motor or an open late model. There's not a lot of tech there. You can pull the hood off of it, and as long as it's got a carburetor, no coil packs, you're good to go.
Oh, that's good. That sounds simple.
Yeah. And then you got to get onto the body. The bodies are the big thing, Just where we've come in the last 5 years with getting these decks up in the air and all that stuff, and you need that. If you're not getting your deck up in the air nowadays, you've got problems. So you're not doing the right thing. And then the bodies, getting the bows out of the bodies. Like on the right side, those guys going to the corner, if they can get by you and they can put a 3 or 4 inch bow in their body, they got a big air dam there along with their spoiler getting through that corner. And so you got to watch that. Then you got to make sure these guys will put like a pop rivet or a zip tie on that door bar on the passenger side. Man, once that thing goes in there and gets a little bit of wind on it, it'll bust those zip ties real easy. And that bar will slide in, and it'll give them 3 or 4 inches of bow, which, if you can get by with that and get that, that's one thing. But just pretty much that on the bodies. And then you get into the shock technology. Man, the shock stuff, if that's where we was talking about today, Mike, a bunch of these teams have got engineers, these top teams are using engineers. And on the national level, you've got Penske having a trailer, you got Integra, you got these big shop companies, now Bilsteins at the racetracks now, they're getting back into it. They're all at those big events, and most of the Lucas Oil Dirt Series events, and I don't get to go to World of Outlaws, but I'm sure there's shop companies represented there as well. But these guys are there and learning stuff every night. Every time they've got a car on the racetrack, they're learning something. So, and the amount of money, and I don't know, I have an exact figure what they're spending there, but the amount of money they're just using on learning shock technology is just got to be crazy amounts. For a tech guy to learn that, I don't have a college education. I'm just lucky enough to have been in the sport long enough and had some good teachers going along here. With MLRA, I do all of my own tech. My nephew helps me, and I got a couple of my best buddies that go and help me as far as staffing, and I can tell, I'll give each one of those guys 1 or 2 things to look at. That's from safety, that's to looking at bodies, and that's me checking shocks, stuff like that. I heard you guys talking about traction control. Yeah. From what I've seen, we haven't seen traction control in quite a while, but there is stuff that we need to be looking at as far as some of the new MSD, what I call MSD boxes. They're not all MSD anymore, but looking at those boxes, the ignition boxes and stuff, I try to stay on top of that part of it as far as the technology, because this is my full-time job. Those guys, they have their regular jobs, and they just come and help me when they can on the weekends. Yeah. Steve Francis and Rick Schwally with the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series. Steve is their tech guy, which Steve has been anybody that knows open dirt late model racing, they know Steve Francis. Rick Schwally, that guy, he hasn't raced. He's kind of like me. He's just been around the sport for a long time and fell in love with it. And he's fell into a good job. He's the director of the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series. And, man, just looking at Rick, you wouldn't think this guy is as smart as he is. But this guy lives and dies dirt late model racing, and he knows. I just can't believe. And I'm not saying I know near what Rick does, but this guy just blows me out of the water. That the resources he has and how he gets it. But again, being on that national level, you have resources that nobody else has. But Rick and Steve do a really good job with the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series, and when they come across something, and I haven't got to be out on the road with them, man, they're on the phone Monday morning and sending pictures, telling me this is what we got to be looking for. Let us know if you run across anything like that. So usually night in, night out with the Lucas Oil Dirt Series, it's usually just Steve Francis, and then if he comes across something, he just bounces it off of Rick. And then at the big events, what we call the crown jewels, then that's when they try to get me to come in, or we got a couple guys out in Ohio that go and help those guys too. So we got tech guys that'll hop in there and go. What's hard about that is those guys like that, they have a full-time job, so they don't get to see what me, Steve, and Rick get to see week in and week out.
Right. Man, it's got to be a grind. You know, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I was on your Facebook page, and I noticed you've got a son now, what, 2-3 years old?
Yeah, Aston. He'll be 2 in April, and then I've got a little girl. His birthday's April 15th. I got a little girl. She's due April 27th. So yeah, we're going to have the 2 babies here, all within 2 years old.
Yeah,
and then I've got my girl. I've got an older girl with a previous marriage. She's going to be 19 in May.
Yeah, so, I saw some pictures of her.
Well, God bless you.
Yeah.
You may have to start working extra weekends.
Yeah. Well, I actually, I kind of wanted Kaylee and Ace and give them a shout out here. My wife Kaylee and my boy Ace. I think they're in the house listening while I'm out here. He likes to carry on a conversation and get excited. So I had to come out and sit in the vehicle so I could talk. But anyway, no, I wanted to take them to Florida with me, but with her being 7 months pregnant and my boy, he's 2 and he's all over the place.
Yeah.
I didn't get to take them to Florida, but we had talked about going down there and taking her parents with us to help out. And I was like, man, that's going to cost a couple grand to do this. Maybe I should get a second job to help pay for that. So,
you need to be like me. You need to know somebody that retired from Kansas City and moved down there. That you can stay with them. I've really been fortunate. The couple I stayed with, they moved down there 3 years ago. Live on a lake. I mean, it was... You can't get it any better than that. Plus, they let me drive their car. How about that?
Yeah.
I think I put almost 1,000 miles on that thing while I was down there. But Ernie, we just haven't really touched on this final thing. I just kind of wanted to do a little digging on you here, man. I remember when we used to do a little RC racing down there at Nevada, and I think Denny Crooks will back me up on this. You weren't very good.
It was the only race car I could afford, Mike. Come on.
Well, I know what you were running as a car, so I can understand. But man, it's been a blast, Ernie. We are past the 2-hour mark, and I can't thank you enough. I know we had a little miscommunication last week, and I apologize again for that. But man, it's been a blast. Like I say, we've been around each other, for quite a while and have talked several times and whatever. But man, really appreciate you coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, Mike, before you let me go here, I'd like to give a couple shout-outs here.
Absolutely.
Just one, my staff with MLRA, from me to them, I just want to thank for what they do. My wife and my kids, I appreciate letting me live my dream here and do what I get to do, and them get to be a part of it. Next part of that is just a reminder, Lucas Oil Speedway play day, that 30th of March on Saturday. I'm not sure the times on that. Then our first event, which will be a weekly racing series event at Lucas Oil Speedway, will be April the 6th on Saturday. The following weekend, MLRA will be there with our opener. That'll be our first event on the 12th and 13th of April. So that's that'll be it. Mike, I appreciate you for MLRA, Lucas Oil Speedway, and Lucas Oil as a whole having us on your show.
Yeah, man, I love coming down there. I just wish I could make it more, but you know, to me it's one of those deals. You guys have got your own video department that way outweighs mine.
Well,
that's for sure.
Well, Ernie, when you say hi, this is Mark Morrell. Make sure you say hi to Cowboy and Harriet for me and tell them Mark Morrell says hello.
Yeah.
I will do that. I'll pass that on to Harriet.
Definitely, that'd be great.
Cowboys do.
Yep.
Yeah, both for Harriet. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
Thanks again, Ernie, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, you guys take care, and thanks for having me on.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yep, and just want to give a shout out. You know, a lot of the racing seasons are starting up, and you know, obviously I'm from I-35.
Right.
So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all good.
A homie.
So we're
A homie.
to that, but want to give a shout out to Valley. They're starting their day. Greg Clements is a great guy, and a great historian. I love every picture, Greg. I told Greg, he came to the drivers' meeting at I-35 back in January, and I said, Greg, just do me a favor. Every picture you put up on Facebook, just put a like on it for me. If you can just do that, and I'll just take it. And Greg's talking about Valley Speedway. They're going to open up their season on April 5th. They're going to have practice practice all March. On Saturday. So they'll be practicing for now I don't think they're going to run Fridays this year for their regular season. So they'll start that instead of Saturdays. So so they're going to start their practice on Saturdays coming up this March. We're going to start ours hopefully on March 2nd and then 9th, and then we'll have our season opener on the 16th. So we'll be looking forward to
I'll probably be there.
So it'll be a pretty cool deal. Yeah.
Well,
looks
now
like we've got a good racing season.
I'll take that back, because the last I talked to Leroy, he's talking like he's going to come up in video at I-35. May not be
I'm
racing.
I'll tell you something about that too, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but Leroy and his dad, I have to just say this straight out. Mickey, my fiance, Mickey, was up there in the booth with me quite a bit, and Leroy just treated her just so nice.
Yeah.
He's got the best manners of any man I've ever met, any young man I've ever met. Just the nicest guy.
Yeah.
Even when he had a tough night, Leroy, you can see a disappointment in his face, but he was right there passing out candy because he got the moniker the Candy Man.
Yeah.
And just the nicest kid you could ever meet.
Yeah.
And very professional.
Absolutely.
And
Curtis
always
did a good
liked being
job.
around him. And his dad is just is an awesome person. One night, Mickey had somehow the battery got taken down on her Ford.
Yeah.
And so he came over, JD came over, and they're all right there trying to take care of us and get us jump started and stuff. I can't say enough for their family and so forth. That just super nice, and appreciate every time they come up and he's up in the booth and all the things that he does that promoting our track up there at I-35 Speedway. Just a really cool deal. So.
I've felt really lucky to be associated with both and appreciate both of them, but. Folks.
Oh, and I've got something for you.
Uh-oh.
Since, we're talking about the track, and this is probably bigger than you ever want.
Bigger than you ever want.
I-35 Speedway shirt for you.
Well, all right, man.
So
I'll add that to the collection. I think I may have 6 or 8. Can you believe this?
Probably 6 or 8.
Yeah,
I know Mickey gives me trouble, and I have that. And I know Ernie said this too, but I also have to give a shout out to my fiance Mickey. And I know you did this. Your wife was always. Right there, and I'm we saw each other during CMS this year, and we're talking about that. But, I mean, without the support of somebody that's behind you, and I know you're the same, Justin, to have a person behind you like that, and with Mickey there for me all the times, and I know. Every race isn't mainly her excitement. I know she liked to drag race when she was younger, and she actually beat guys.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. She used to like to drag race, so she was a real hot rod. Her brother would fix up the cars for her, and then she'd go drag race.
Here in town?
No, that was a little further south.
Oh,
just
okay.
South
Okay, all right.
But I have to give a shout out to Mickey because she's always there. And really appreciate all the hard work she does, and putting up with me and going every week to the races and all this stuff. And I can't also, just real quick shout out to Mike and Kyle Johnson, just the two of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. I really appreciate being a part of that track. JD, who's helped me so many times, like during the season when I had to be in the hospital a couple of times. And JD came up and filled in for me.
Yes, I remember that.
Can't
Absolutely.
thank him enough as well. And all the people at that track. And and all the tracks, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Linda and her and Mary, they're up there in the control tower with me, and have to put up with my, what I call my outdoor voice on the inside of that booth. You know, and up there shouting because I get excited. You know, and all the unsung heroes. But you know, obviously we want you to support I-35 Speedway, but most of all, we want you to just support local racing.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, rather, obviously we're in a competition with everybody with the different tracks, but at the same time, we want to see everybody succeeding, because the more there are and the more tracks that are succeeding, then the more all the things that we love and all the memories that you and Justin and all of us, Carl, you know, Ernie, everybody, that everybody has all these special things that we have, all these treasured memories that are so cool, and all these positive things can be a part of your life as well with all this stuff. And so we advise you to go to your local track, check it out, go to bunches of tracks. You know, that's why Carb is so cool, because you get that membership and then you get in free on Carb nights, and you get a kind of a smorgasbord.
I think that's one of the things I like about what I do. Of course, Lakeside is pretty much my Friday menu, but Saturday night I get to roam around and go wherever, and of course I appreciate each venue. That, like I say, each one kind of has its own lifestyle.
You know, Joan Ellis has promised me I get to go, and she's invited Mickey and I to come up in her suite.
Oh, it's nice. I've been in there. Yes, I've been in there.
Joan was I was writing for a local paper here too, also Kansas City Sports and Fitness deal, besides the other three or four or whatever. But she called me in there one night and she goes, tell Mark Morrell I need him in my suite right now. I'm like, okay. So I said, Joan Ellis wants you in her suite now. So I came down there and she said, if you're going to write about racing in Kansas City, you need to write about guys like Bruce Hill, but especially Terry Bivens, because of what he did when he went into that. Now, I can't say enough about Jerry and Billy Wishman and what they did. And, you know, the first time I heard an announcer mispronounce Jerry's name, and Billy was like, well, you get up there, Mark. You get up there and tell him. Now he'll be in the announcer booth. But, you know, just that, all that, you know, and the stuff that they brought and so forth. And she said, will you write about Terry Bivens? Because if they were coming here, and Terry be the first person to talk about Bruce Hill. And I wrote a little thing on the Facebook page about Bruce. It was really funny. Is about a year ago, I posted on the Facebook page I think it was it ABC Sports used to cut in with you know, like their Wild World of Sports. They would cut in. They'd go to bowling or some, you know, Franz Klammer going down a hill, and then they come back and here's the Daytona 500. But they showed Terry Bivens, and I can't tell you how we stood up and all cheered.
Oh, I bet, absolutely.
Terry. And then I posted the race from YouTube on the Facebook page, and he said, you know, Claudia was down there, his wife scoring, and you know the wives would score the drivers from the other teams, because they got a sign for that. So at any rate, he said that was the first time he'd ever watched the entire race.
Oh, really?
You know,
that he was in.
See it.
That he was in.
He got to see the race that he was in. It really got a thrill out of it.
That would be pretty neat.
Pretty cool deal. Yeah. But I want to thank you very much for having me and Justin.
Mark, you will be back, man. We got more to cover. We got more
some
to
other
cover.
Stories. Well, you all have stories. That's the cool thing about it. But yeah, I've got some other stories. We didn't even touch on IndyCar.
No.
You know, I got one about Florence Henderson.
Okay. All right.
But she actually cussed me out. That was the Big Air 400. I got some trouble from Florence Henderson. But all worked out good.
That's a good plug for
Mother Brady. That's another show.
That's another show.
Time and another show.
Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up. We're a little bit over our 2 hours, which is not really our limit, but we do whatever we want here. But, man, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. Mark and Carl and Ernie. Well, I've learned a lot here tonight. And once again, don't forget, tomorrow night at 7 again, we will be live down at the World of Wheels. Justin and I will be wandering around down there trying to find people to interview and see what we can come up with, and hopefully show you some pretty nice old race cars. How many on display, Justin?
I believe we have 17.
17 race cars?
Including go-karts and juniors.
Yeah.
And I have to say this too, Mike, before we go, and I think Justin and you and I would all agree that, you know, obviously the fans are awesome to come to the tracks and support, but you drivers have always been, and I said this at the banquet, you guys have always been my heroes when it came to this stuff. To come down as a little kid and go into the pit area and you guys take the time to talk to us.
Yeah,
I can't tell you
absolutely.
how much that means to kids and adults as well, to be able to have you guys
Yeah.
down there and talk to you.
Sit in the car.
Be as cool. Man, it's just a really neat deal. So
Yeah.
thank you guys and gals for all you do. Now, Riley Fuller was our Rookie of the Year, and she's really cool. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of good drivers out that track, and I just want to thank you all very much for all you do, and for putting up with the media people like us to come up and stick a microphone in your face, especially you think about it. In your day, if you have a tough day, and all of a sudden, can you imagine somebody just walking up with a microphone, Mike, why'd you drop the camera? Or what did you, or Justin, what was that edit? I don't believe that.
Why'd you knock the clock over?
Why'd you knock the clock over? Or why is the camera showing your feet? You know, at this point, you're still. But you know, we got to thank you guys for putting up with us and for doing that. So
It's what makes it happen as a racer. I mean, that's all I can say, folks. We got to go. We're going to wrap it up. Like I say, thanks to everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. And like I've said before, if you like it, man, tell a friend. If you don't, just forget it. That's it. Good night.